Okay, how about now, Crunch? Anything better? Anything better there, Crunch? Or is that better? Crunch, let me know if you can hear me. I guess that's a no. Okay, guess that's a no. Oh, we're good now. Perfect. Perfect. We're good. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so we are looking at the London Spitfire versus the SF Shock here, and this is going to be a match that we take a look at. Okay, so we're going to be taking a look at what happened, and we're going to see if we're in this situation. We're going to see what led to this situation. Uh, why was this match close? Again, we would have expected this to be pretty one-sided, is my understanding. I haven't been super close to following exactly what the standings are in this season, but most people would have expected Shock to sort of trounce the Spitfire here. And that's not what happened. What exactly happened? Well, you can go look at the scoreline to find out, or you can work your way through this review and we'll find out. Okay, but let's give this a go.
2, 1. Round 1.
So we're opening. Obviously, our bans are over because we're seeing Reinhardt again. And here we are. And as we look at this, we see, okay, we take our look, and what we've got going on is, oh, let's pull out our Epic Pen. What we've got going on is just basically a brawl mirror. We've seen brawls. That's not terribly surprising, regardless of whether or not these teams favor the brawl or favor something double bubble related. We're going to be in a situation where we would expect to see Brawl come out here if Brawl is allowed by the bans on University. That's not something that is at all weird. So here we go. We come out in terms of positioning that both teams have taken. They're fighting roughly for the middle here. It does look like we had Super go for the, from his perspective, left control there, the hallway control. We have less map control coming in for Spitfire here, but let's see how that evolves. Okay, so then they get Mulfig over there. They're choosing to play it like this, and now we've adjusted so that now we've got better map control for Spitfire, where yes, Mulfig is sort of out on his own punishable over here, but you don't really want to spend... You're in this situation where you sort of have to go, hey, yes, we need to spend time punishing Mulfig, we need Mulfig to leave, but that's time that we're not punishing the Reinhardt. And we also have the Symmetras going on both sides, so this is Sim Brawl rather than McCree Brawl going on. So we see that happening. Where's our Symmetra? Over here, Glister. Glister isn't really getting done what he needs to yet, so he's a little slower to get ramped. I would expect this fight, just based on what we see right here, to go the way of Spitfire, based on, hey, we have our Sim going first and shouldn't have trouble maintaining the beam at this point, and we have the better off-angle positioning for our D.Va here. So I think we know how this fight goes, but let's find out if we're right or wrong. Wall comes out, the lamp comes out first, unsurprisingly, for the Spitfire. Oh, let's take one more look there. So, here we are. We're set up like this. We would have expected Spitfire to sort of have this. And then we're not able to keep that beam. That beam was at max range, but that beam should have been working. These walls go out. And again, this is the sort of situation where neither of these walls are amazing, but the wall from Spitfire should have been slightly better here. Sure. But Hattie just got split a little too hard by that. Really? I'm surprised that Hattie's under enough pressure from that. But okay. And that's going to force the earlier lamp because Hattie was just jammed a little too tightly and there wasn't good enough reactions from the rest of Spitfire to protect that. Like, this wall was fine too. This wall blocked out Glisser, and yes, Glisser can ramp off of it a bit, but like, Glisser was stuck out of the fight. Supports get to go over the wall, but it still takes them a second. This should not have been this one-sided based on these walls. And the one-sidedness causes the lamp to come out early, and Hottie goes down, and that's going to be the fight. Okay, so not strong enough peel there, or not strong enough punish, however you want to think about it, using the angles that they had. Okay, they're going to set up. They're not setting up particularly deep. They have the option to set up deeper for better poke. That they don't have McCree's is probably part of why they're setting up like this. But I am still a little surprised that we're not getting a bit more in terms of we're going to poke from here and from here, at least while Spitfire are back here. Make them push into getting shot from different angles, and then as they get to like here, back off and control this choke if that's what you want to do. But get your pressure lead first. Unless, are they bouncing this around specific ults? Ah, that's what they're doing. The reason they're not doing the poke battle is specifically because they have window for Violet, and they don't think Rippa has window yet. So they don't want any poke tap in because they don't want to give Rippa a chance to equalize. That's good ult tracking. Very minimal with the poke from Shock. They're trying to let Spitfire come in so they can hit this window at a point at which Spitfire can't back out. And Spitfire is basically refusing to take the fight until they have their window. Yep. And the jig is up. Like, this should have been known that, hey, Spitfire gets it. Spitfire's not coming in. So that doesn't lead to you poking more as Shock, but that leads to, as soon as Spitfire looks like they're ready to come for real, you poke for real because that's your tell that they already have their window. So doesn't really matter because the window comes out instantly. We, of course, have the wall to block the window, wall to block the window here, wall to cut off the Rhine here. Nothing too unusual. Where did Sparker get Violet from? Sparker's taking his off angle. Sure. Not the best shots in the world. Got Violet, but that was a lot of near misses on FD God. Better. Okay. Off angles are powerful. McCree on the off angle is one of the most powerful things in this composition. Speaking of which, they did swap to the McCree, we can obviously see instead of the Sim, and that's unsurprising. As soon as they had to retake, they had to push in, it made sense to make the swap. Now we're setting up with Rhine and Hallway for Spitfire, Diva main, McCree main. We see the wall, and the wall is strong for the retake, so that's why they chose to stay on Sim, because they didn't lose the first fight on Sim, they lost the second fight on Sim, which meant that they had wall. That's fine. They're going to use this wall. I'm not convinced that I'd have used this ice wall yet, but so be it. Really? This is the I don't want you guys to push during your sim wall, so I'm going to put this up. I don't love this. I'd have actually liked to catch them coming past the sim wall with this, or have actually been on an angle. I don't like this. I'm just not gonna. I'm gonna try to use this to answer your sim wall. It doesn't make sense as the greatest sim wall answer because you can't like hard protect your McCree during it. In theory, this is supposed to be a well, you guys are afraid to push past your own sim wall while we're high nooning, but while that's true, they're not going to push past the sim wall while you're high nooning. They're still going to shoot at you. And you don't have the tools to protect McCree, like, oh, we'll protect him with our Rhine Shield, we'll protect him with our Diva Body, we'll protect him with Defense Matrix. Like, you don't have the tools to do that for 6 seconds, or if you do, it's just too expensive to do that for 6 seconds. I really would have preferred to bait this trap to be like, we're going to send our McCree out here quietly, and then after these guys have already pushed past the wall, after they've gone here and here to be pushing into us, now we're going to hit our high noon. And is it a little more dangerous? I suppose it's a little more dangerous, but like, this is like we're spending our high noon to counter your sim wall, but at the end of that, we're still going to be down massive defensive resources that we used to protect our high noon to counter your sim wall. So I don't really like that. I'd have preferred a, hey, we actually have a chance of winning the fight with this high noon from this angle when you guys push in on our McCree that sort of disappeared as the fight was going on as you guys were pushing in. I really would have preferred that. And if I need to boost her up over to here to protect it with my diva, or to boost her to knock someone, to knock someone away with my diva, so be it. So it's an imperfect counter, which part of that is fair. I mean, Simwall is a better ult than High Noon, so it's always going to be an imperfect counter. But I think we could have driven that better. True Shock fans rock the Season 1 orange skins, not the black skins. Yeah, they do. I want more. There we go. I think I want more orange with my thumbnail, didn't I? I remember the orange stuff. There we go. Though I would not consider myself a true Shock fan. I suppose locally they're my team, but Shock have established control here. They didn't push up for the choke this time, and I know we talked about that last time, how they didn't push up because of the window advantage. This time they didn't push up to get their angles because they didn't actually ever push Spitfire back far enough. They got a couple eliminations, but they didn't full wipe them, so Spitfire never really surrendered this space. They went back into here a little bit, but they never surrendered the space hard enough for Shock to go up to here to punish them on their way up, because Shock don't actually want to fight them right here. They want to poke them from these spots as they're approaching, and by the time they get close, they want to fall back so that they can poke them some more and get more of a pressure lead. And that opportunity never existed because they didn't actually back off that far. Sure. Better, but there's all sorts of DM in there. Then you have the window. So one poke ult into a second poke ult. Poke ult, first one was manipulated with the window, and then we have hard brawl ults from Shock. Shock should easily win this out. So you guys saw that. I mean, London had a strategy here. They didn't take different angles with their poke ults, which I would have preferred. London's strategy was, hey, we're going to use one poke ult with power. We'll use our high noon. It, of course, gets blocked by a wall, but we lift it with our own wall. And that's one poke ult, and that's going to demand a lot of resources to block it. Wall, defense matrix, Ryan Shield, people taking cover against it, whatever. That's one thing. And then we're going to do, after you guys have used your resources, we're going to use a second poke ult in the form of our window. So that's not a terrible strategy. It is better to stagger your ults if you're going to use them from the same direction. I do appreciate that. I much prefer taking different angles with your poke ults. You can do your poke ults at the same time if you do them from different angles, but if you are going to do them from the angle, if you feel rushed by the time, the clock, etc., staggering them one after the other, not together, not trying to high noon through your window, is the better strategy. That said, it is not better than, okay, now you guys have to touch point, you didn't ultimately get enough value. One of the issues with doing your ults from the same direction, your poke ults from the same direction staggered, is that it does create a situation where the opponents, if they do get to hard cover, well, that just works. It's not, oh, now they need different hard cover because the ults are coming from the same direction. That's not true if they have different. In this case, we get to, hey, they threatened with their ults, their staggered poke ults. There's our second staggered poke ult, but this was never really in danger of flipping. They didn't, like, with their staggered poke ults here, force Shock into this situation. We're like, oh, it's about to flip, you have to touch it. They didn't force anything like that, and because they didn't force anything like that, we're now in a situation where The Shock are able to go, yes, they use their poke, they potentially use their poke ult back. That's not really what I care about. What I actually care more about is, hey, we've got some powerful brawl ults here. Yeah, we've sort of got a brawl ult over here. That's a thing. But we've got some powerful brawl ults here between our Window and our Blizzard, and they're just going to be able to win now because Spitfire have to come to point and have nothing left in the tank. This Shatter, obviously, not going to work out. Yeah, there's the answering window. Okay. Let's head over to point 2. Where are we going? City center? Gardens? Gardens it is. Sure. Brawl's less necessary here. Brawl in University shouldn't have surprised anyone. Here it's less necessary, but it looks like they're gonna run Brawl again. Okay.
4, 3, 2, 1. Round 2. Capture the objective.
Gonna both go for Lucio and Sim. They're opening with the Sim. Part of that is because, hey, it's the Sim Brawl. The Sim Brawl is useful if you get control. The Sim Brawl is especially nice, but the Sim also helps get you there faster. So no surprise that we've sort of adapted to that as the general. And we see ultimately the Spitfire were able to get here set up first. But the Shock do have a strategy. They've tucked their D.Va over here, so they're ready to go for, hey, you guys have your angle here, your angle here, your angle here. This is good. You're threatening from 3 directions. It's going to be hard for Shock to rotate up here, but Shock aren't without their own answer where they're going, hey, we're potentially going to do a sweep across with our D.Va. And if we get to it, where's our Lucio? Because D.Va boop plus Lucio boop can be pretty powerful. Currently over here helping the team move. So maybe we're not going for a double boot play here, but we're potentially going either for a knock them off the edge play, less likely, or a knock them onto the ground play. We're probably looking for something where Shock is going to like pretend to rotate up here. That's going to cause someone who feels vulnerable to a boop to be taking their angle out here, and then D.Va's going to go up as these guys double back and actually go out here to run them over. That's what I'm hoping to see happen. Mulfig sort of sees the play coming and is trying to shut that down by putting pressure on D.Va. And Shock aren't being serious enough with their bait, and no one's taking the off angle. So that's not going to work for Shock anymore. But if they push up, it's not so painful for them to push up through here anymore because no one's willing to. They can push up here for real now because no one's holding this off angle. D.Va dropped, and no one else is going to be willing to move out here for the next second or two for this off angle to threaten in here, because if they do that while this D.Va still has health, it turns into a D.Va knocks them down, and it was a bait, and they come back play. So Shock should go up right now. That's what should happen. Okay. It's not what happened. And because of that, I would put preference on Spitfire winning this fight. Violet's out of position. They managed to stabilize that. They got Ice Block out first from Shock. Shock stabilized. And then the window. That's not rare. I don't know that that's going to be enough to tilt losing your Reinhardt first. It's a big deal to get that first, and plus the window it might be. Yeah, that gets us Chobin for London. And now the next ult coming online is going to belong to... No, still Spitfire. Self-destruct. There's Glisters. Yep. Yeah, okay. So that happens sometimes. If you don't close out your lead in Brawl v Brawl in the first fight quickly enough, if you go ahead but don't actually get an elimination, you can run into situations where the team that is losing tends to come up with their window first. And if they can then use their window, the fact that they came up with their window first, to turn that into an actual win, to turn that into an actual elimination, then they can actually win off of that. So yes, there's a long cooldown trade that happens in Brawl v Brawl, or can happen in Brawl v Brawl. You can frequently go, let's carefully turn advantages into greater advantages into greater advantages, be that greater angles, be that, hey, we'll trade one cooldown for a more valuable cooldown, which means we can trade our more valuable cooldown for another cooldown from you guys, etc. Like, there's things that you can usually do, but there is a window where the team that was losing, if they didn't actually lose someone, gets a power spike in that first fight, because they tend to get the first window from that AoE healing from the BAP. Assuming the BAPs are, roughly equivalent in their ability to do damage. Spitfire don't want to drop this one, and they're going to flip it back. Okay, good. Good fight. Are we going to see the swap from Shock? Glisser, are you going to stay or swap? I think you're going to swap. No, you're going to stay. Glisser stays on Sim at 58% when they don't have point control. Okay. Setting up here. Mulfig goes there in time. We'll have boosters back in time. No. No, thank you. I really would have preferred this window to be a little bit, I don't know how to say this, but better. This window is okay. Like, yes, everyone can shoot through this window. But we really could have angled our team a little more in this direction. And we could have put our window a little bit more like this effectively. And then it still gives us sort of multiple angles. Like, we can still shoot people coming in from over here, but it lets us do a little more in terms of, hey, we can have people over here, and we have a bit more in terms of angular power, is basically how I'd say that. And we're not really losing this by doing so. Now we're in a situation where, yes, we can still sort of take our angles still, but like someone standing here can't actually see through this platform. There's issues with that. Like, can't actually shoot at the other team. If I want to shoot at the other team, we all have to basically stand here. That's not very much angle power. Whereas if we'd set this window more correctly, we'd have a little bit more ability to do stuff. Not perfect, but a little bit more ability to do stuff. I would have preferred that. Okay, Ice Wall. And Chuck ultimately get run over, high ground advantage, good stuff. Nice poke advantage that the high ground advantage leads to, and then they take it out in the actual brawl phase. Okay. Sparker's adjusting sim turrets for them to come this way. Super's just walked out onto point, and I don't think that's the play. So here we are. Super, are you setting up some sort of bait play for FD God and Shobin? Because I don't think we want you on point yet. You don't have to go to point. This puts some pressure on them, but their answer to this pressure is just going to be D.Va behind this physical object that you can't shoot her through. So you're just giving Spitfire a chance to shoot at you right now, unless you're setting up some play of trying to draw eyeballs here so that your boopers can go through here and try to boop them, or go up here and try to boop them. Like, what are you drawing eyeballs for? You're not going to have like a McCree high nooning from over here or anything. What is the play? You're going to have your sim wall. Sure. I don't really think that's enough to justify it. You're going to shatter D.Va over there? Okay, that might work. That might force the lamp. Okay. I'm not sure sim wall's the play there, Spitfire. Self-destruct. Did we not have lamp? Here we are. Oh, we did throw the lamp there. Okay. You just got pinned out of the lamp. Again? No, you got shattered there. It's kind of an early lamp, but I understand why you did it. And then Super correctly pins you out of the lamp. And then the wall comes through and does it. Okay, good play. As soon as that blizzard was out, it probably wasn't worth using self-destruct. But that's okay. Spitfire still built up enough here that they need like 1.5 more team fights to win it. Okay, Sparker makes his swap. So he likes that swap when he doesn't have ult, whereas Glisser not so much. At least for the retake. Is this all going to be main, or is someone going to go through hookah there? Looking pretty main. Mirrored windows. Shock have used their wall. Shock have also lost their Lucio to a fire strike. Which means now is Spitfire's tempo push. Wall advantages should be evened. Yeah, there's equalized walls, but there's still a person advantage for Spitfire. Mirrored beats. Oh, they turned that back. So, Hottie there is pinning out. Why are you in danger of even losing people here? Is it just because you got too split? Yeah, it's because you got separated too far here, which means you get lost. And why are you that far separated? Did you just wander there on your own? You just tried to retreat in there. That was foolish. That's a positioning mistake. I mean, it's not a completely unforced positioning mistake. We have ults, we have self-destructs, etc. going off, but obviously you shouldn't be losing a team fight when you start with the pick and you guys are using relatively even ults, mirroring beats. Yes, self-destruct is coming out, but you're using your own ults in terms of shatters, etc. But they do ultimately hold it. Looked like it was going to go the other way. So here we are. You are able to pin out, get away with your smidgen of life, take down Lucio again, and you just get away with a smidgen of life while you're down Blaze. And this looks like it might be the beginning of trouble, but it's not based on the spawns that are actually here. Rippa goes down, but Shock has just lost too much. Okay. That got scarier than it should have, but ultimately our Spitfire do come out ahead, as they're supposed to in the fight where they get the opening Lucio pick with their window. And they're going to flip the point. Oh, worst of both worlds for FD got there. He didn't stall the point, and he got caught leaving. Not a good little portion of the map for him. Point, not a good point for him, would be a right way to say that. There's our TP, that's just a distraction, yeah. Basically the same window. It's fine, that's doing some zoning during the blizzard. Sparker retreats into the lamp. Ooh, that's a big one. But they had nowhere to go. Good stuff. Okay.
Score 1-1. Ready for battle.
Let's jump to our third point here. And are we still going to see brawls? Are we still going to see brawl mirrors here? Okay. I guess if we did on guard, there's no reason not to here.
3, 2, 1. Round 3. Capture the objective.
Is that real Blaze? Yeah, that's real. Okay, so Blaze is coming out with the Torb. Let's watch some Torb action, guys. See what's going on. McCree Torb, hey. Yeah, so they're setting up for hit scan. Double hit scan does that. Well, I mean, it's not double hit scan here, but double poke does have a history on this map. Setting up for very strong angle control. If we look at where the turret is set up, that's not really helping us. That's to stop us from getting flanked. So we're pressuring from here, and then we've got our situation where McCree is pressuring from here. Shot correctly went, hey, if you guys have the high ground control, the heavy poke pressure, we're potentially going to play from here because we can turtle here while putting some pressure on point, at least until you guys drop, and then we have something we can rotate on and try to run over in a brawl. If you guys are going to play heavy poke, we're going to look for places where we can quickly take a more brawly fight and take away the piece that isn't protected well enough, potentially a diva. More likely a Reinhardt. Sparker's refusing to play over here. He doesn't want to get jumped by the diva, which I understand, but it means that the angles are going to be a little on the weak side. And Shock just have to decide, and decide quickly, who they're going to run down, because that Reinhardt is run downable, as is that Torb. No, you don't want to just stall this out, Shock. You do not want to poke sustain battle, Shock. You could go challenge Sparker up there. Yeah, there you go. Now you don't even care anymore. Don't even follow Chobin. That should have been a U-turn. You did not need to lose that mech, Chobin. But you guys should still be fine. Yeah, so more and better angles tends to win. But as we can see here, what happened is Spitfire wasn't willing to greed their angles quite enough, in my opinion. They brought their McCree over here instead of over here, so when angled with their Torb, that wasn't quite enough for them in terms of actually threatening, etc. It didn't put enough of a clock on the Shock. It didn't force the Shock to send their diva up, have their McCree roll away, pressure down the diva to make the diva leave, and now you have a sustain health resource lead on Shock. That would have been something that I'd have preferred to see, to be quite honest. Yes, it put a little more risk on your McCree, but it actually put a lot more pressure on Shock. Instead, it gave Shock time to sort of gather their senses, gather their thoughts with cover between them and the poke threats. And with that in mind, they're able to go, well, we actually can outbrawl something. And this is something that you ran into, especially in early goats, but you run into where, yes, more and greater angles tends to win. But you can just sort of find a semi-closed space or find a place. You do have limited time windows where if you split too hard on your team, if you don't protect them well enough, you can just go, we're going to crush the vulnerable thing. You're not protecting it well enough. You're protecting it with your angles, but you're not there with your strong peel abilities to protect it. You're not there with your flashbang to protect it. You're not there with your whatever tools your hero has to actually protect it. And that can be a thing where you go, okay, well, we're going to quickly take care of something, and then we're going to go back into cover. Or in this case, we're going to quickly take care of something and throw a Mei wall up so that you can't help us. Or we're going to go push this, and while we push this, our Diva's going to block out the one angle, our Mei wall is going to block out another. So Brawl, definitely has its ways to play against angles, especially if the angles give it time. They don't apply pressure on it before. Once you tick down a bit of Brawl's resources, then it gets into trouble because then it doesn't have the tools to make that play anymore. But its resources weren't ticked down. It was allowed to sort of get here, make a plan, even if that only takes a second or two. A couple seconds of being able to make a plan without losing resources is too expensive. And you might look at this and go, but these are both Brawl teams, Temporal. Yeah, but they're not. I mean, yes, they are both Brawl teams, but Spitfire is doing something a little different with their double poke here. That's certainly not as brawly as having the Mei. And they swapped. Good. I would not have expected them to try to retake with the Torb. Okay, little surprised that Shock didn't do a little more for positioning. They didn't go take high ground. They didn't really go take a spread. They didn't try to punish. They didn't try to push back uh, the Spitfire a little further. They didn't try to punish Spitfire's people on the way back. Spitfire's people weren't all coming back. Spitfire lost a person or two and backed off. So, like, you had the option to go out here as 6 and try to run them over and try to take like a 6v4 type situation. They didn't, which is fine, but they also didn't go send people up here to get angle control. I'm gonna pass on that window, thanks. I like the angle. I like the angle control from this, and this is a less good reaction from Shock. They're trying to go in here, sure. Now we have the resource heavy use from Spitfire, and they get Reinhardt for it. Yep. And you'll notice Spitfire didn't give Shock as long to plan how they were going to go out brawl them. Like, Spitfire, again, took better angles than Shock, but this time they actually took slightly more extreme angles than Shock. They had their McCree here. They had they had their threat from here. They took more extreme angles than last time, and they, in doing so, didn't give Shock time to make a plan. So Shock sort of went, let's huddle here. And huddling here was costing them resources. They were getting pelted in this direction, which was worse than when they huddled here when the threats were like this, and it actually wasn't costing them resources. And then they go, okay, let's do this, but they're behind resources. They've already used their window and wall, so we get the answering wall here. Eventually this wall comes up from Shock, but it's late because of the wall tempos, and then Spitfire gets to use its window. Okay. Why are you slowing this fight down? Spitfire, why are you slowing this fight down? You've already won. Oh, did we not hear the high noon because we paused? So you went like this. Rhine should be back in spawn room. Shock is trying to stall time with their high noon from... Jump to the right here. From here. Sure, I don't really care. He's flashing between cover and out of cover. They do appropriately react when it's gone. Shock should not have been able to stall that long. They got too much stall done early. Before this point. Why? Why were you able to do that much stall? You can use the high noon for the back half of Super's respawn, but your high noon did not get you buy you Super's whole respawn. Okay, so there's Super collapsing. Let's take one more look at this. Okay, Super goes down. Spitfire are thinking, hey, we're going to take the cap. May says, no, you don't get to take the cap. Fine. That May wall goes up, and Nero should go down here. Nero should still go down here. Does not because of the high noon. Okay, so it's a combination of the May stall plus the high noon that gets Super back. And now you should have most of your cooldowns back and a shield advantage. That hurts. That was well done on Shock's part. Then you're going to use the beat. Yeah, you can't lose that fight. And now it's Shock's round for sure. This point has a little more travel distance than normal to get here for... It's not more travel distance than normal, it's just totally in the open, which makes it vulnerable. We might touch with Molfig, but I don't think it matters. Yeah, you lost Ripa. Don't actually let it flip. Okay. Okay. We're going for some of the hero recoveries on both sides now. Spitfire have their high ground. They're late on dropping Mulfig there. We're mirroring high noons, but Mulfig took more chip than he should have. Neither of those are great. That's good though. Yeah, it was a good window fire strike. There's been a couple good window fire strikes from Hottie and Rippa now. I still don't like giving them that much point before you put pressure on it. Like, you don't have to do that. Yes, you can set up for your high ground, but you can drop a Reinhardt to hold here. You can drop a Diva to hold here much earlier than you are, and that'll let you do shenanigans like the Shock did to not have the point flipped. You have a little bit of time to give on point, then you do a May Ice block, then you do a high noon, then you have your May Ice block because you waited through the high noon back for the actual fight when your Rein's back. Like, you can do those kinds of tricks when you have point time to play with. And I know you're partially playing with your point time to probably set up for this play here with Mulfig, but like you can drop your Reinhardt earlier than you did. You really can. That's not gonna go well. So the Blizzard just gets yeeted in there because the Diva's not around, but the Spitfire totally avoid it. Are you able to remech Mulfig? Oh, you even got FD. Not a good day for FD God. This ends up hurting them later on Nepal. Oh, the point, how much of it they're giving up? I could see that. Okay. And Mulfig then takes down Glisser. And even if you lose Mulfig, it should be fine here. And you don't even lose Mulfig. Mulfig breaks the mech, or with help breaks the mech. Okay. Mulfig got away with entirely too much that match, or that round. That team fight is more accurate. Let's actually watch this from his perspective, because that was just an incredible amount of Diva shenanigans. Okay, I think we're heading into the beginning of the team fight. Here we are, hiding, lurking, whatever we want to call it. We see the actual push is happening now. Glisser senses something is wrong. Not able to get initial value on that. The split comes off, but that split isn't like amazing because this is still a 2v1. It's not like a, oh, I'm terrified 2v1, but this is still a 2v1. We're using micro. We leave and decide that it's time to self-destruct with a fair amount of health on our mech, but okay. There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for FD God to get caught by that. Like, that's not even a great play by Mulfig. That's just FD God is, like, out to lunch or something right now. I know that he wants the elimination. He's trying to be like, oh, I want this, etc., but it's not even close. Like, it's not even close to getting the elimination when that mech comes down. That's kind of an unforgivable mistake. Okay.
Time to raise my APM.
Sure.
Are you even trying?
You get booped into the Mega. Should have plenty of support here for Chobin, and Spitfire's team is far enough away. Why don't you like your Diva, Violet? Violet? Excuse me? Violet's paying attention over here. Chobin still has armor, should be fine. You hit your shift, reasonable. But then you throw another heal there, as opposed to paying attention to the Diva fight. And you don't charge jump to throw the nade over your super at Chobin here. You throw another nade at Chobin. Ooh, or at super, excuse me. Yeah, that's too expensive. Like, you should still have time to get a nade, but then you drift here No, no. You just don't care about your diva. And then you hit your reload? Ugh. Yeah, I would be unhappy if I was Chobin right now.
Time to raise my APM. I need healing. Need healing.
Okay, that's enough. I mean, Mulfig did a lot of things right there, but it definitely took some mistakes from Shock, and they happened. Specifically, mistakes from FD God, especially, and to a lesser degree, Violet there. Mm-hmm.
冻住，不许走。
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Spitfire win the first one. We see what happened there. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. We saw strong, good Firestrike windows from this combination. These guys are getting more value out of that than you necessarily expect. Like Firestrike window is a good play, but it's not an amazing play for most teams. And this is more value than I would necessarily have expected from a single map between these two. We also see FD God seems to be just be having a bad time. That's just not. I don't think that's normal for him. I think this is underperformance. But I haven't been watching a ton of Owl, so I could be mistaken there. This certainly looks weaker than what we saw at the beginning. I liked our angle control better from Spitfire. I did. Shock have a reasonable correction solution to some of the weaker angle control, and that's good on them. And they also had a better job in terms of, hey, we're going to use the point and get a test time, and that was quite nice. The, hey, we're going to do the ice block into the high noon, that more than half our time of the high noon will be behind cover, but it doesn't matter because you guys still can't actually flip the point on us during it to get us time to get our Reinhardt back, and now we have full resources for the fight. That was pretty nice. So yeah, those are sort of the important things that we've seen right now. Shock are looking to play this a little bit. And they did a similar thing back on Garden too, where they went, we're not actually going to bother with some of this high ground angle stuff. We're going to find creative ways to punish your diva. We're going to shatter your diva on the ground. Then we're going to pin her out of the lamp type thing. Then we're going to do this on the ground. Like they're using their brawl tools well, their brawl ultimates well to sort of break conventional wisdom. Not conventional wisdom, sort of conventional wisdom. Like more and better angles is strong, but they're doing things like, no, we're tucked back here, and then we go quickly wipe you out here when you give us someone vulnerable, and we put up our wall and we make it an actual brawl game when you guys are running the McCree Torb. And if we go back to Garden, like I said, we shatter your diva on the ground, we use our sim wall to cut you off from her, and then we pin her out of the lamp, etc. type thing. Like they are doing a good job with the actual brawl part of their brawl comp and understanding how to use it to beat teams that have high ground, to beat teams that are taking angles when they're doing an only okay job of it. When you're taking angles, you use those angles to defend your team, and your front line has to properly understand how to kite to turn those angles into more time, deeper angles, and more protection. But again, deeper angles are a key there. And if you do split too hard, if you do get too greedy with your angles, you do end up in situations where there's someone that can be run over and quickly dealt with. And things like May walls can block off one of the angles or in a big enough part of the angles, and you don't have enough peel to protect them. So I like what we're seeing here from, I like that we're seeing a bit of a style mix up. They're playing mostly the same comp, but Shock is like, no, we're getting a little more value from our brawl, whereas Spitfire is, hey, no, angles, angles, angles. And I'm not too surprised to see that. I mean, I know Spilo is really big on the fundamental of angles, and he's coaching over there for Spitfire now. And I've sort of seen his stance evolve even more in that direction, and I think that's generally correct. But there is a little part of me that likes the reminder from a more brawl heavy playstyle that it exists, that it works that it can counter teams that get a little too, I would say, greedy on the angles almost, but except that, again, Spitfire needed to be more greedy on this angle. So greedy isn't quite the right word. Okay, let's jump on to the next map here. But first win goes to London Spitfire.
Ready for battle.
Mm-hmm.
Incoming in 30 seconds.
So Spitfire on the brawl again. Shock look like they might give us something different. They might not though. Smurf is in though, so we would sort of expect them to. Usually they'd run super if they were going to play Rhine. Smurf might be playing this Rhine, or it could just be a pretend show where we might see a swap for a different point. Yeah, there we go. Smurf over to the Monkey. This looks more like a real comp. Okay, so Spitfire setting up with the Brawl, and we're playing it into
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
a double bubble. A Tracer Hanzo double bubble. Okay, so now we get to see something, a little more interesting. We get a style matchup. We saw, I suppose, a little change from Spitfire where they played with the Torb for a bit there, and we saw a little bit of Sim and McCree bouncing back and forth on the first map. But now here on Eichenwald, we're seeing a defense with Brawl against a pretty standard double bubble. Okay, let them walk in pretty hard there. Oh, Nara got in the limb. Never mind, you didn't let them walk in. So here we are. No, you really are just letting them walk in pretty hard. We do see this. Is this Sonic Arrow what's causing you guys to back up that hard? I guess that's fair. It's a lot of respect to a Sonic Arrow. That's a lot of respect to a Sonic Arrow. Especially when you should still have full DM. You should be able to go, nope, we're going to peek this DM'd, and our Diva and our McCree are going to shoot at you, or Ryan fire strikes you, or our Lucio shoots you from this direction, or something. Like, I would expect a little more pressure on these guys as they're walking across what's sort of the hard part of the rotation. That Sonic Arrow should not have gone them that much. And where did you hit that from, Nero? Just right there? Okay, well, that's everything. Bye, Spitfire. Are we going to see some amazing stall games? Like, you don't have a... Yeah. You got Smurf and Violet in exchange. Okay. Better trade backs than you had any business getting. But Shock still should be in control. Mm-hmm.
Stop the payload.
Time to raise my ATM.
Mm-hmm. You're going to try and spawn camp them now, which is a good strategy. When you're the Brawl team and they're the more divey team, spawn camping is a good strategy because you create situations where if they can't get out of spawn, they can't get room to stage. If they can't get out of spawn, they can't actually get surrounds on you. Like, Shock needs to create a situation, or would like to create a situation, where it's like, hey, our Tracer's coming in from here. Maybe our Winston's coming in from here, as our core pushes from this direction into the Spitfire. That's usually what you'd like to do when you have a more divey type comp. But that's hard if you can't get out of the spawn at all, and is part of the value of spawn camping. And some of the times when spawn camping is in its most effective is when teams are running Rhine comps, or when teams are running Rhine comps into non-Rhine comps, like this situation. But also, who doesn't like a good old-fashioned spawn camp? Do we have any of the players on Spitfire from the OG Selfless days? No, we don't. not like the only original spawn campers, but they really made a name for themselves off of spawn camping in the pre-owl scene. Why are we seeing a lot fewer mirror matchups than we have in the past? That's a great question. So part of I think is what is happening is we have tighter balance. We are in a tighter balance than we have been in the past. If we go to the very beginning of the year, end of last year, we were in a situation where we had the what we've called the hybrid comp. It was a hybrid poke comp, and we basically during that meta we buffed McCree and McCree didn't take over. We buffed Rhine, and Rhine didn't take over. The Brawl comp, the McCree-Rhine comp, didn't take over when we buffed those two heroes. The Brawl comp didn't show up until we nerfed basically all of the heroes in the hybrid comp, which meant all of the heroes in the hybrid comp were overtuned more. It doesn't completely mean that, but part of what that means is it's a likely case that all of the heroes in the hybrid comp were more overtune of the rest of the cast than McCree, Rhine, and maybe Bap were. So like we nerfed those things, and the hybrid comp stuck as the meta and things stuck until we nerfed those things. Even though we'd buffed these things before we nerfed those heroes, the hybrid comp stayed as the meta. But then once they did get nerfed hard enough, these heroes were able to go, okay, we're strong enough to sort of define a meta, but maybe not quite. So it sort of defined a meta in the West or part of the West, Western contenders at least. And that was a thing where it was like, okay, Europe went and did this in contenders. Owl wasn't playing right then, so no one could look to Owl to see what the meta was. And then we had Eastern contenders was a little more like, no, we like our Winstons. We think it's this double bubble thing instead, which was like, well, we sort of see what you're saying, and Winston got a buff, but it's not running wild, and you guys can't be too serious about this because even though you guys think this is the meta and more Eastern contenders, we're still seeing this situation where, hey, you guys are breaking form and running something very close to this on some map types. And these guys don't have to run something like this on map types. They're able to basically one trick this, whereas the Eastern contenders teams, and again, there's no Owl to defer to at the time, were running some of this and some of this. But there's also a greater respect put on, well, what Korea is running is more likely to be right than what the West is running. So we ended up and again, still no Owl to defer to. So we ended up in this situation where different ideas were A, the balance is tighter than usual, and B, different ideas were allowed to sort of prosper because you had, again, Korean teams are going to be respected more for what they're running is more likely to be right because it's considered the higher level competition, but they're not actually being allowed to one trick. They're not actually able to one trick it. Western teams are running this, or we're running this, and we were in this. Okay, well, what's going on here? So that caused people to level up both of the playstyles separately, but both of the playstyles have actually been leveled up pretty high, which means coaches get to use that information of more highly leveled up teams. Players are more comfortable because they've come from both regions of, hey, because they've scrimmed in both regions of, hey, what does it look like? We saw that when American Tornado was jumping back and forth between Brawl and Double Bubble, not sure what to run because they were running Double Bubble with the Owl teams, but then they got smacked around by a team running Brawl. And then we did see before we went into the joust, was it the June joust where we had the bans on Reinhardt and Tracer that broke up the meta? We were seeing a movement towards double bubble. We were seeing, okay, maybe we can one trick double bubble everywhere more often, but then that got broken up by the bans. So we've just seen both of these things have been leveled up pretty hard. And I'm not saying these are the only two things being run right now. We're also seeing we were seeing some of the Zen Ball stuff. We're now seeing some more Orisa stuff. But I think the balance is tighter than it usually is right now, is one explanation, which I think I've done a pretty good job of laying out why that hypothesis has some merit to it. And I also think we had different regions were allowed to experiment and come to a conclusion because there was no, well, Owl's definitely right. And then the next choice would usually be, well, what's being run in Korea is probably right. But, that doesn't actually, it had less weight behind it than usual because it was like, that's a little more questionable. You guys can't even one trick it. And when something is strong meta, it gets one tricked. And part of why it perhaps wasn't being one tricked is because the balance was tighter than usual. Okay. And compared to the last thing in Owl, it's because of the hero locks. The hero locks basically ruled out too many playstyle options in the last meta. So yeah, you had lots of mirror then. Assumably the Shock don't like the good old fashioned spawn camp. Yeah, but who cares? Who doesn't like a good old fashioned spawn camp? The people kick spawn camp. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yes, forcing the team to use ults to get out of spawn. We love it. Unless we're the team using ults to get out of spawn. Mm-hmm. And again, this isn't a bad situation for Spitfire because this cart hasn't even gotten to the gate, which is the delay timer, and Shock just used. If I could draw arrows, well, that would be good. Shock just used their primal and their dragon. They just used their dragon, so they don't have their grab dragon. They're running a Hanzo in their double bubble comp, and they just broke their combo. They just used their dragon and their primal to get out of spawn. And it's okay with Spitfire if Spitfires are using ults to try and maintain this spawn hold, because when their spawn hold finally is broken, Shock are having to do it with ults to get out of spawn, to get the cart moving at all, to get what is usually free space on a map. So totally okay with Spitfire that they lost this fight. This is not, oh, we were playing too far forward, guys. Look, we were playing too far forward, and this is always what happens when we play too far forward. Contrary to what people may have been told on their ladder games, this is totally fine with Spitfire. This is not a punishment for them having gotten too aggressive. This is, oh, you mean they had to dump ults in us to get control of the card again? Totally fine, and now we'll probably get a fight here anyway. Fantastic. They pay a lot of respect to that Sonic Arrow. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Shock do have map control here, and the cart's a little further than Spitfire would have liked, but still okay overall. There's that Sonic Arrow again. They can't respect it again here. They're going to have to punish the Smurf. Please punish the Smurf. Okay. Grab, defending against the grab with the Blizzard. Defending against the grab with the Blizzard works. And okay. What? Please. I guess they thought FD God was having a bad day too. It's not unusual for Shock to run Violet Twilight. We saw a fair amount of that in one of the first stages, etc. But usually they did it because they were planning to double flex support. This is weird. Violet Lucio. Okay. Temporal, do you think hero lock should be implemented in competitive at the very least for higher ranks, masters and above? No. I don't think hero locks belong, or hero bans belong in Overwatch, to be perfectly honest. I think it does too much to take away ways that the game are played. I think Overwatch has deep strategy to it that has to do with synergy between tank combos and support combos and what you can do with whole team comps. I think that's actually very important to Overwatch, and I really don't like how big removing Winston, removing Reinhardt, removing Brig. I don't like how big of a huge shift that makes to the whole landscape. I don't like that. I don't think that makes sense because now it becomes much less about, okay, let's find the right strategy, etc. Like the gameplay becomes worse. The level of strategy, the level of tactics become worse when you do rotating bans like that, etc. Because one hero ban is such a big change to how the game is played and what your appropriate answers to things are. Like the level of gameplay comes down when you do that. And I'm not personally a fan of that. I also think with how Overwatch works and with how seasons aren't really different, in high ranks, what happens when someone's heroes get banned is, oh, I'm a Winston main and Winston is banned this week, for this month, for whatever. I guess I'm not playing Overwatch for this month. I'm not going to, what most players are going to do, they're not going to go, oh, I should spend this time to go play Reinhardt if my hero is going to be banned for 2 weeks. They're going to go, well, I guess I'll just play another game or do something else for 2 weeks, and then I'll play Winston again when he's back. They're not going to go, let me just lose a bunch of games. People have a natural loss aversion, and you can see this if you look at the stats. There's someone who's actually doing a good job covering this. I may link you guys to them later, but you tend not to look at win rate to figure out how over or underpowered heroes are. One of the better ways to look at it from stats, and this isn't perfect, at least the hypothesis that I've heard for this, like I said, I may link their work later. The hypothesis that I've heard for this that seems to have some merit to it is you can't look at the win rates because you actually have to instead look at the pick rates. And the reason that you do this is what happens is people have a strong loss aversion, and you can recognize this if you look into the literature surrounding gambling, but people have a strong enough loss aversion that if their hero isn't working, they swap heroes. And that's why it's not like, oh, Torb is terrible or Reaper is terrible, look how terrible their win rate is. No, they just don't get played, except for the very few people who can make them work. But that doesn't mean that they're not weak if, they have a terrible pick rate. So that tends to be how that works. And with that in mind, you go, hey, I'm not going to, if the hero that you're good at is banned, you're not going to go, oh, I'm willing to learn a new hero through a 70% loss rate. No, you're not. If your loss rate gets too bad, you will swap to a hero that does better in the meta when we're talking about not bans, or when we're talking about bans, you'll go, I'll go do something else, would be my theory at least. And then that leads you to a situation of, and then I'll come back when my hero can be played. And that's sort of actually what you get with Flavor of the Month balancing also, by the way. Flavor of the Month balancing is trying to hit on that same idea where people will come back when they hear their hero is strong. So like by intentionally making heroes sometimes overtuned, sometimes undertuned, sometimes overtuned, making different heroes overtuned at different times by rotating like this, you actually get more people to more regularly come back to the game. It's a retention strategy. I don't like it, but it's a retention strategy that Blizzard is not unfamiliar with. Hero locks seem more indicative of someone being too strong in a meta that they become locked. Didn't they already try hero bans in comp and everyone hated it? Yes, and pretty much exactly what I said happened, where people stopped playing while their hero was banned and then came back when it was unbanned. What were your thoughts when we had hero pools? I didn't like them. The hero pools did make me actually branch out a bit and learn new heroes. Okay. That was never a concern for me. Like, some people want to play the game as one hero, and people might not like that, but some people want to do that, whatever. The way I recommend most people to play the game was to build a hero pool anyways, to be like, hey, I'm going to build this pool for a solution where I can play, I'm going to build a hit scan pool. So McCree, Widow, Ashe, Tracer, Reaper, things like that. Maybe Torb. Okay, cool. So cool. This makes sense as a hit scan pool. Yes, I know Torb isn't really a hit scan hero, but he would frequently fit into, anyway, it doesn't matter. So you're looking at things like that and you go, okay, that's how I recommend people play the game, but we didn't need bans to enforce that. And the truth is hitting bans either does nothing because it's like, okay, we banned Ashe, but Widow is a perfectly reasonable substitute. Making it up, that depends on the meta for whether that's true or not. So that did basically nothing. Or it creates situations where, okay, the solution to this really cheesy thing that you're doing involves using a tank hero that doesn't exist. Like, oh, D.Va's been banned. Oh my god, I do not want to play into Bastion comps with D.Va banned. Please stop. Please stop. Please stop, because you can end up in situations like that, where I'm not saying that D.Va is the only solution to Bastion, but D.Va is a really core piece of solutions against good Bastion teams. Like, if a team actually knows how to go, hey, maybe we're going to run a Sim Bastion, or maybe we're going to run like a Bastion Tracer or something like that, and we're going to support it well, and we're going to go do this, and we're going to do some Warp Bunker shenanigans. Like, I would really like to have a D.Va to help with rotations with her infinite damage absorption for that time. If it's played well. If it's not played well, it doesn't matter. You can take care of it with sleeps and hooks and things like that. But not having the option for D.Va, for example, especially before Sigma was in the game with her infinite damage absorption, that's just, ugh. I ain't playing if May is banned. I like May's gameplay more than everyone else's, and yeah, you're gonna have that too. Hero bans anywhere but Owl is boring because I want to play for fun, not to play something said needs to be locked. Yeah, okay. Fascinating, thanks. Not to mention Mercy Mains would be without a flaming torch and pitchforks. No, their pitchfork is to get her unbanned at that point. There's something to be said there. James says, I used to like weeks where Ryan was banned because I could play Orisa without people moaning. There's something there, and that's probably true for lower ranks as well, where they're always crying for Reinhardt, and if Reinhardt is banned, it gives players a chance to do other heroes in those ranks. There's probably some truth there. Again, I would say scrims are the better answer there. It was interesting when the fair counters got banned and pharmacy still didn't completely take over the game. I know. But I don't like when the bans get that targeted either. Like, you look at bans and it's like you're clearly just targeting a meta. Like, I don't like when the bans get that obvious either. It's like you're trying to make this specific thing happen. They can do some experimenting, whatever, but I'm not a huge fan of, like, what are you doing? Personal preference, though. My face when Roadhog and our band and they run bunker cops. It was interesting. We talked about that one. Ban Diva Sigma Hog. Bring about the second Dominic crisis. Please don't. Please don't. It can give it more variation, but at the same time, no, it just seems boring. Rainbow Six Siege added bans, and it's just boring. It's worse because the bans are mid-match. Ooh, yeah. So you wait 10 minutes for the lobby to decide on bans, then the same for a band every time. It's just boring if you liked those operators. I could see that. And if the same people are being banned all the time, we should be in a situation where we should just be doing some balance. But then you get into a situation where there might not actually need to be balance done, but the community is convinced that these people need to be banned, but the right strategies aren't being found to contain these things that aren't actually overpowered because the community has decided that they're overpowered. And that has certainly happened in games before. But here we go. Back to our review. Okay, so we had that. The Spitfire just took out Smurf and Violet. They should be able to get control off of that. They are stabilizing. They are doing a good job of going, hey, we got some eliminations. And then after getting their eliminations, they rotate into a closed space to recover their resources. And they recover their resources in a closed space. And then they should be willing to go, okay, now we're willing to go out to point with someone to anchor point, or we're willing to find the next thing to try to run over. But you have a moment in here to try to recover resources when you're the Brawl team against a more pokey team or a team that's looking for isolation more, like a dive poke hybrid. Please don't just stay out there. You have no idea that Nero's there. That's so painful. Sparker should get eliminated here. Sparker does not get eliminated here. Rippa gets eliminated. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This can't happen. Oh, that was way too much work. They're going to have to surrender some space, but they should be able to push back with advantage. Tracer set up. There's our dragon and beat. I don't like both of those at the same time. This is, in my opinion, a mistake from Shock. We're looking at these, and we have the nano going on the monkey, and that's helping. But then we're going to nano and beat, and I really don't like that. Did we need to beat for something? Chiobin is stunned. Where's Chiobin? You potentially lose Chiobin if you don't do that. No, I don't like it. I don't like that we used both there. I understand it, but you're now in a situation where, hey, the opponents were going to be running from us during our Dragon Strike anyways, or they weren't at least going to not be hard focusing us during our Dragon Strike anyways. No like. You're sort of overlapping ults that make space for you effectively. Spitfire are going to answer with their lamp and self-destruct. and Shock are ultimately going to win control here. And Shock invested more ults than I like into that, but ultimately that's off the back of Ripa getting that late elimination. Like, he's got the faster respawn slightly from here than we had from here with the person he eliminated, and it's BAP, which is unfortunately incredibly critical for making the Brawl comp work. Like, if you lose your BAP first, you're generally going to lose the fight. So that was a really good trade that Nero made there. And that basically won this fight with some help from overulting. Oh, it seems like nearly every streamer content creator thinks we need bans. Why do you think that is? An example of the community thinking something was OP but really wasn't. Oh, why do they think that? Because they need content. But the real answer to your question is it's the same time when everyone in the community, not actually everyone, but the loud group, and we'll call them the majority, whether they were the majority or not, the believed majority of opinion was that we needed roll queue was that roll queue that we needed 222 lock. That was something that we needed, and we needed roll queue. These were things that people said, this is going to be great, this is going to make the game better. I don't want to queue and then have to play tank. I want to be able to queue as DPS. The community thought that that was something we needed. Now, some of us were like, this is a terrible idea, this is not a good idea, this is going to cause DPS increased times, this is not going to be something that we're going to want, and this is also going to hurt watchability of the game from a streaming standpoint, which is important for a modern game because DPS players, who are some of the stars on Twitch and such, are effectively not going to be able to play DPS. They're not going to go, well, I'll just be the third or fourth DPS. They're going to be sitting in queues for 30 minutes in high level games and top 500 games because that's where your best streamers are, for example. And that's going to create situations where that's unwatchable. And what do you know? Most people now have come to an agreement of, hey, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Now, there's holdouts that disagree, but it sure seemed like at the time, and this is, you didn't actually do good polling on this, but it sure seemed like at the time 70% of people thought, oh, we need this, etc. And then after it happened, you immediately had a, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Like the numbers flipped effectively. Now the number might be closer to 50-50. The number might even be in favor of, no, it's good that we have it like this, etc. That the numbers have become more even than they were after it was released and went terrible is because people left the game. So, like, the numbers have become even through the attrition of the people who didn't like it left. So, yeah. Because they need content based. Yeah. That Sonic Arrow. They're pushing through it. So we have the Sonic Arrow, then we have the High Noon from Sparker from here. No? I'm good without it, thank you. This isn't doing enough for you. That's not the play, Hottie. You can't chase him down. Ugh. That was not the play at all. You could have walked at him to make him leave. You could have walked at him to get him to waste jump, and when he wastes jump, that's when you pushed a point. You spent too long here. This is fine. Not a threat. Hottie, just shield. Hottie, go bind card in shield. Okay. Now we're challenging hard while there's a monkey in our backline. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of how I expected that to go. So this was fine. We put the window up, and Shot goes, nope, we're going to dive over the window with our Winston and our Tracer. That's always what they were going to do. But we had the cart available here to Hottie, and Hottie just needs to go, I'm going to use the cart as partial cover. I'm going to use this as partial cover. Maybe we'll even wall to keep some of you out from shooting at us, and we're going to let our 4 people deal with the monkey and Tracer. Maybe let 5 people deal with the monkey and Tracer type situation. Like, this never needed to be, oh, we're also going to go aggressive. I don't know what the miscommunication was there that allowed that to happen. Because your front line as a brawl team can't go aggressive, generally shouldn't go aggressive, while your backline's being jumped, while your backline is dealing with a threat. That's what your Reinhardt shield is for, in fact. To keep himself from getting eliminated to try and be pressure relief on him himself, while his team takes the fight 5v2, 4v2, whatever in their own backline. Ryan helps keep some of the stuff out. Ryan doesn't push in to invite more danger to create more angles on himself. That's not what you do. It's different than Winston, because you'll notice if they were playing double bubble mirrors, that's very frequently exactly what you do. Their Winston comes in on your backline, and you go, nope, my Winston is going to go in on their backline, because Winston is well designed to stop people from contributing by being on them. Reinhardt can stop people from contributing by being on a corner, by sticking a shield in the way. And if he doesn't have to do that, even better. But Reinhardt needs more effectively. Winston can go in and be like, oh, I got a bubble and I have my own bubble. I'm golden. Cool. I contribute most to peeling for my backline in a lot of situations by not letting their backline contribute. That's a little less the Reinhardt game. Reinhardt was playing a similar game, sort of, and going, maybe I'll block some of it out with my shield, but he's really more doing I need to just not require my team's resources. Because Winston can go, hey, if I got the bubble and I have my bubble, I can then get out if I need to. Reinhardt doesn't have that option. Reinhardt, if he's going and trying to chew and trying to bite off more, he starts requiring team resources, and that means people are paying attention to him rather than peeling the monkey off their back line. So this was a communication mistake. Still think roll queue is better than open queue, especially with the priority pass. I have no desire to go back to 5 DPS with 1 support.
The checkpoint.
I mean, that's not fun. On the other hand, how do I want to answer that? That's fine. I hear you. I hear where you're coming from, Nardstorm. I'm still going to say I disagree. I don't strongly disagree, but I disagree. And part of what I disagree with is I also don't think the roll lock was like a good solution in general. It gave them room. Like, we heard a lot of arguments about how much better the balance is going to be after we roll lock into 2-2-2. And that didn't really happen. Right now we have a really good balance, but we're quite a bit after our 2-2-2 roll lock. We're 2 years after our 2-2-2 roll lock, and we're just now getting to some pretty good balance. Like, we definitely did not get the promised, because there's less combinations, because there's less interactions, we'll be able to get much better balance. I remember that rallying cry being loud, and it certainly wasn't true. It allowed for a little more, well, now we don't care if our tanks are overpowered, or we don't care if our supports are overpowered, because there can only be 2 of them. Like, things. It led to that, but that wasn't actually, things are better balanced going on. But I do see what you're saying in terms of people don't like it when when there's 4 DPS in a game, 3 DPS in a game. But a lot of the time there weren't. And, one of the things was, okay, well, being flexible had its own value on your SR. Now, I think it was still better even then to go, nope, I'm working on something. Maybe I'm working on 1 hero in the DPS role, 1 hero in the support role, or whatever the case may be, so that you have a little bit of flexibility while you're working on your skills. But, yeah, doesn't matter. That's not a fair comparison, though, Crunch. Crunch is saying, I admit roll queue is flawed, but I played some open queue today, and it was the worst experience for comp I've ever had. That's not fair, because the people who are serious, we've all decided that roll queue, as a community, is where the ladder is. We've decided that open queue isn't serious. So open queue isn't a serious place at this point. So that's not really a fair comparison, Crunch, because there's, if you took away this, open queue would not be as messy and as silly as it is right now, or as inflated SR-wise. I also think that 222 has made the player base a lot better. I think time has had a lot to do with that, but I could see that argument. I could see that argument. It has also made the player base smaller, quite a bit smaller, because DPS players wanted to play DPS, a lot of them, and they did not hang around. They moved on to the next game rather than wait through 30-minute, 45-minute, 4-hour queues. No, I'm not exaggerating. We've had some of those. Okay. And they're preempting that becoming a problem again, by the way, with this server merge thing. That's what's going on with the, hey, we don't have regions anymore. We're just preempting that problem. As the population decreases, we'll potentially have saved it, and people won't, we'll slowly be giving people more and more people from outside of the region with higher latencies, etc. OpenQ seems to work better in Asian societies, which are more communitarian in general. However, roll queue can also feel very restrictive if your team is not countering correctly plus no comps. Fair. So what you're saying is Overwatch's best queue mode would be no, Overwatch's best queue mode would have been quick play exists. You can sign up for quick play as 1 to 6 people, no problem. And competitive play exists. You can sign up for competitive play as 6 people, and only as 6 people. That would have been the best way to do Overwatch. I know. That was never going to happen, and yet that's what they thought. That's what Jeff thought he was making when they made the game, but they got talked out of it. This would have been the best way to do it. Quick play is your warm up. You do what you want there. You jump in, you get comfortable, you do whatever. You can take it somewhat seriously. It has an MMR, but you're working on your heroes. Then you could have had arcade modes beyond that. But quick play would have been like this is your warm up mode, your work on your heroes mode, your whatever. And then competitive play is only for six stacking. You only six stack in competitive play because Overwatch isn't about how good you are individually at this. It's a team game that is heavily team based on what's your synergy look like, what can your tank line do, what can your support line do, how can you support your DPS, what can your tank do to combo with your DPS, can your DPS land in there to go do that finisher that your tank set up, all of that. That is what would have made this game way less frustrating to people and really a better game. But it would have had less appeal and people would have been rallying forever. We would have had, just like we had the no, we need 2-2-2 lock rally going on the forums forever, we would have had the we need solo queue, not having solo queue is this, and everyone's just getting carried and this and this and this, and that would have been the rallying cry forever. It would be like yeah. Like it would have been the thing that no, we don't believe you. We don't believe that this is the best way to do it. We want to try it, and then once you try it, oh, well, maybe this is worse, but we're never going back type thing. Okay, back to this. Mm-hmm. Went in for their monkey. Yeah, you guys shouldn't let the split happen this hard. So the monkey's in. Let's get our timing there. Is the monkey going in after the frontline charges? He kind of is. No, he's really not. There's just not a good reason for Hadi to go in here. Like, cool. This is an over-aggression from Smurf. Smurf is going in. Great. Smurf got his bubble. Smurf has his ultimate to bail him out. It's okay. We'll hold this corner. We will hold this corner. Your car can get from here to here, no problem. We're going to eliminate your monkey or heavily drain him of his resources, including his ult, without letting him get an elimination. And then we're going to push in while your monkey doesn't have his ult, while your monkey is low on resources and Anna needs to heal him but can't. So Anna has to decide, even if monkey gets out alive and gets back here, am I going to spend time healing my monkey or am I going to spend time dealing with the team that is now charging, running me over, etc. Like, what you do is you just go, nope, I'm going to post up, hold my corner. Post up, hold my corner. Maybe Kelix probably is going to go back and help deal with Smurf. Maybe Kelix goes up here and helps try to enforce this corner, not let the follow-up come in to support it, keep Zarya out, etc. And then once Smurf is dealt with, then you run in and win. You have to take it first effectively when you're playing the brawl verse. If you don't find an opening to just run them over early, you got to take it first when it comes to their dive, weather their dive, and then push in and run them over. Instead, for some reason, we say, the Maywall's fine. The Maywall's fine with me. I have no idea why we're blizzarding. No idea why we're blizzarding. Because this blizzard now means that we have to commit. This team now has to go for it because we've invested too much, and that's wrong. If the Zarya had actually been stuck by this wall, we might have taken out this Zarya, but we didn't need the blizzard for this. But Zarya did not get stuck. and there's no reason. Now we're going to send people forward, and now, what do you know, Smurf plus Glisser have a real chance of taking someone down because they have themselves a 2v3 that they got angles to start the fight with, and they have a primal involved in, and they had a Zarya bubble for, instead of having themselves a 2v5 or a 2v4, where it's going to be much harder even with an ult to get eliminations, because this team has to go forward to try to get value out of their Blizzard. They don't have to, but they're going to. Yeah, you can see this now. Rather than appropriately answer how to play Brawl into a dive type comp, sort of. This is sort of a double bubble is a hard to define comp. Is it an ult comp? Is it a poke comp? Is it a dive comp? Is it a brawl comp? It takes on a lot of aspects of everything, but it's certainly not as brawly as your brawl comp. Its ults are fine. It's really playing to win with its ults against you, so really what it is an ult comp. But it's an ult comp that's playing for some dive with a little bit of poke. It's a poke dive that's playing to brawl, but whatever. Or that's playing to ult, at least in this matchup. That's what it is. But again, and I've seen European teams do this before, and I don't really like it, where they go, hey, our flex support is losing, so we just swap to Moira. If our flex support is just getting picked on too hard, we just swap to Moira. And I really don't like that. And I shouldn't pick on Europe specifically, though I've seen it more when I'm working with European teams, that it's just like the solution to our flex support is getting picked on is to our flex support swaps to Moira. No. The solution is not to adjust your flex support. The solution is to change your playstyle. The solution was to appropriately peel for it. Your BAP was doing something important for your team. I promise. I promise your BAP was doing something important for your team, and they're now not going to be able to do that something important. If Moira was the better hero, you'd run Moira all the time. Now you can say, oh, well, BAP's the better hero because they're more flexible against more compositions, but now that we know what we're playing against, we want to play Moira. And there's something to that, but the truth is, you don't want your solution, A, it's not 100% true, but B, you don't want your solution, if you can avoid it, to be, hey, let's swap to here. You want it to be playstyle changes. Your playstyle is more flexible and is something that you can adjust when the enemy shows up out of spawn, etc., and you see their comp much more quickly than you can adjust the heroes that you're running. And they can potentially play swap games with you around ult charge and all this stuff, and it's just not right to go, hey, let's just go, like, it's not terrible to have Rippa go Moira, but Rippa going Moira can't be the entirety of the solution. It can't be, well, now Rippa's on Moira, so now we just ignore Rippa and we go forward and fight you. Like, what? No. No. We still are going to peel this correctly. That's what we're going to do. Is it not worth going Moira in order to demand fewer resources from the team? This is organized play. And in organized play, I just walked us through what the solution is. Like, I don't want to go fight their front line while they have a primaling monkey and a tracer in my backline. I don't want to do that. My being on Moira or Rippa being on Moira creates a situation where we're less likely to make an error and get eliminated while we're peeling that, but we still need to peel it. And we didn't really. We didn't then peel it. We then pushed forward. And so, like, yes, you're in a situation where your Moira does demand less resources than your BAP, but not really, because what you're looking at here is it's not a demanding resources things. I want to deal with the monkey in the backline first. I want to force the tracer, spend some blinks, and then have to leave the fight first. Like, I want those things dealt with whether I'm on Moira or BAP, but by being on BAP, I actually put more pressure on Shock to rush their dives because I have a little more poke. I can hurt their Winston a little more. I can, punch back a little bit at them potentially. Like, I put a little more pressure on them to act when I'm on BAP than I do. Plus, I have a lamp to answer some things. Like, you put more pressure on them on the BAP. And that's, again, not me saying that you can't go to the Moira, but you are giving up things that matter, and that the pressure that you have on the team to force them to dive earlier than they might like to, the lamp that you have there, and I was going to hard try to peel the monkey anyway. So, like, yes, you're better because you can fade way more often than you could lamp for yourself, for example, against the dive. And yes, that is going to help, and it's going to mean that you mess up less. But that means absolutely nothing to me if you don't then also adjust your playstyle to, regardless of which flex support you have. Even if you had Zen, your playstyle would be, we're going to peel the monkey when he comes in. Like, we're going to set up in a corner, put up our shield, whatever the case may be. Orion might even be backing up with his shield up, etc., to get the monkey back in front of him. Like, it might be a case of, hey, the monkey dives in on my backline here, and if I'm here with my Rhine, I'm going to go back until I actually have the monkey in front of me, and my whole team is pushing back into the monkey that now jumped out, and now we're just going to crush him. Or really, he's going to jump out, and we're going to keep going forward, and we're going to wipe out their team. Like, that's what we're looking to do. And I see this sometimes, well, we're going to swap, and now our back line is on its own because they swapped. And it's like, if we were actually doing a full swap to be like, now we're going a team that can just hard run in and run them over, but that's not what we're doing because we still have a McCree. McCree can't hard go in with us. This isn't a rush. This isn't a Lucio, Moira, Winston, Diva, Reaper, Echo, Tracer, Sombra, whatever type thing. This is still a brawl comp, not a full-on rush, run them over type thing. So Talon Dive, whatever you want to call it. So like, no, our solution isn't, well, now they're there and like that did good things. No, it really didn't do that good of things. It really didn't do that good of things. And actually, the monkey's going to consistently separate is still going to jump in, and our BAP had more ability to heal our Rhine, who was sort of trying to hold the front line, not invite more, but hold the front line. Our BAP had more ability to do that than Moira. And if Moira, when jumped, goes, well, I'll just fade to the front, and now the monkey's not on me, and now I'm holding Rhine, well, now we're peeling this monkey and Tracer more slowly. So that's not great either. But in ladder, yes, you going Moira in ladder to solve this kind of problem, sure, no problem. But that's because you don't expect your team to correctly address the problem in ladder. This is organized play, so I'm more critical. And it was sort of the same thing that you would see in Goats, and I'll stop after this tangent, but it was sort of the same thing you'd see in Goats, where like European teams or even deep into Goats really, really fast to go, the other team is triple DPS, quad DPS, has any DPS, is dive, whatever, let's replace our Zen with a Moira. And it's like, don't do that. Please don't do that. You can beat, if you're disciplined, if you know what you're doing, you can beat a dive team with Zen Goats just fine. Is it easier with Moira Goats? It absolutely was. But get disciplined enough to do it right, because otherwise you get into swap games where they do stuff where it's like, okay, we're on dive or we're on quad DPS, and then you get stuck swapping between these heroes and such, and you don't know when you're on defense what the opponents are going to open as. If you're on offense and you want to swap to Moira immediately, I guess that's okay, but like, you really should learn how to play it the right way with the hero without having to make your swaps. You should learn how to play your comp. Your first solution to things should be, hey, can we adjust how we're playing the comp to solve the problem if we're playing in an organized setup? Your second solution might be, hey, the comp doesn't work, or hey, we can make it even stronger if we make one swap or two swaps, and they can't really punish us for making those 1 to 2 hero swaps with ult economy mass swaps back and forth. And I saw there was too much willingness to do that. Again, that's not some like, oh, this is terrible, etc. I'm picking on EU for this because it was something I noticed more in EU. I could pick on NA the same way. Like, I could go to NA and go, NA tried to force dive when Goats was a thing way longer. NA teams did way longer than EU teams did. EU got the jump on that. Like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, NA is better, blah, 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 blah. That's not what I'm going for here. I'm just pointing out this is something that they had. And Spitfire obviously is an EU team that I'm seeing kind of the same thing from, so it's triggering me a little bit. But NA had plenty of mistakes as well. Would swapping to Moira and swapping from McCree to Reaper be better against this dive? Just go very hard rush? That could work. That could work. At that point, Shock would lean more heavily into their poke aspects, but they can't. They can't really lean more heavily into their poke aspects here because they're on third point. So at that point, Shock might actually go themselves a brawl comp, and the brawl comp could beat the rush comp that you're describing. But that's a lot of swaps for Shock. That said, Shock has 3 minutes, so they've sort of got time. But yes, that would be a better solution than what they did. But again, just be flexible in how you play the comp. Play the comp the correct way against what Shock is doing is better. is maybe not better, but is certainly my preference. Mm-hmm. Throwing beats around. I missed the beginning of that. Okay, here we go. We're coming into the fight. They do have their one last fight here. We do have beats on both. We have basically double support ults on both sides, plus Shatter available from Spitfire. Okay, and we're on Doomfist Reaper because we're in concerned stall mode.
Payload is approaching its destination.
You're going out there hard. You're using the Coalescence as cover. Doomfist, no, you're still getting shredded. You're still getting shredded on Spitfire's team, even with the Coalescence as cover. So the beat comes out because weird. Blaze gets taken care of, and that's over. Unless? No. No unless. Okay.
I'll show them.
I mean, Blaze kind of went in early. And this is just cleanup phase.
Round 1 complete.
Okay, so shock finish with 2 minutes. That is a long time on Eichenwald to finish with.
0 to 3. Switching sides. Initiating match.
A little bit more.
Ready for battle.
Okay.
One shot.
So now things are a little different. This is the first time we've really seen Spitfire come off of Brawl. If they're actually coming off of Brawl. We see Shock have adjusted. Nero's no longer on Hanzo. He's on the Echo, and he does get a Mercy to go with him in Violet. Again, weird. But hey.
5, 4,
And is Spitfire just going to swap back? Is Heidi going to go back to Rhyme there? Or is this real?
objective A.
Okay. So we're running an Orisa Brawl. And now we're making it a little more serious poke. Now Spitfire's adjusted their comp further. Let's see if they actually run with this. Or if they turn around. Before we get serious into analysis. Okay, so they're running this, and what they're running here, that's an Orisa, that's a McCree, that's a BAP, that's a fair amount of poke. So poke, poke, poke. So diver. This is just too flexible to describe. And this is... Briggs is always hard to describe. She gets run to enable dive and to counter dive. And really she gets run in poke comps a lot as the piece that helps counter dive, because poke in theory is vulnerable to dive, and she gets run as anti-dive. So you could call her Brawl, because Brawl sort of is anti-dive, but she's like not actually that amazing at brawling. What she really is she is an anti-dive piece, which makes sense in a poke comp. So we're looking at this, and they're thinking that they're playing something resembling a dive. It's a pretty hybridized comp. Like, this is a diver. D.Va can be a diver. Brig will enable your diver. It's a pretty hybridized comp, but this is looking like they're thinking, hey, we're going to play something pokey. And they do definitely have more poke value than this over here, which is like poke poke. It's really just a pocketed echo that has good poke value over here. So they're thinking they're going to play some sort of poke battle, which that can work. That can work. You can soften this up enough so it can't go in. On the other hand, if this can stage well, it can then pull the trigger. And also, this comp has been known to go, hey, we're just going to let our Winston constantly sort of get poked, then go cover, get poked, then go cover to charge up nanos and then win with our nano Winston. That's a thing that's been known to happen. I'm not a huge fan of that, but that is a thing that people certainly consider acceptable. People certainly, even in Owl, consider a reasonable win strategy. Doing that would mostly be charging up Supercharger in this situation, and Supercharger is better than a lot of ults that usually gets done again. So I don't know if they'll be willing to do that. This could be interesting. Avast also says, okay. I mean, yeah. Why Diva instead of Sigma? Because Diva's amazing. How to actually answer this? Diva instead of Sigma. So Sigma would be fine, except that you can't really send your Sigma anywhere. Sigma runs into a little problem of Sigma can fight a flanker once he's set up just fine, but Sigma can't handle an actual dive if he's taking off angles. And Sigma, to get real poke value, needs to take off angles. But if full-on hard dives are happening on Sigma, Sigma is not very happy, and it's hard to back him up enough to protect him well enough, even if you're poking from a different angle to try and protect him. So Sigma's sort of overwhelmable when it comes to full dives, whereas Diva has that retreat button, has those boosters to go back. She also contests that high ground better. Um, if you if they were setting up defensively, I would be less surprised if we saw Sigma. But when you're going on the offense, when you're thinking, hey, we're gonna have to do a little more to take angles from you rather than being able to preset in them, Sigma's a little less good at going and taking angles from people. He's really better at holding angles that he already has. Uh, and that can be a little harder in this, especially against a team that, hey, this can be a 5-person dive that can come in on Sigma. You're not going to be able to protect that. 5-person dive comes in on Diva, I'm leaving. Sort of thing. I'm thinking Diva instead of Sigma because his numbers have been brought down and Divas have been brought up enough as well. Sort of. I mean, he got his shield partially reverted. I don't think Sigma's in a terrible spot anymore. But Diva's always sort of been the best, except when she's been nerfed into the grave. Diva offers a lot of flexibility. Like, she offers a lot of flexibility, and you'll notice I wasn't really willing to put her in the dive or the poke or the brawl category because she works pretty darn well in all of them. So how are you guys going to break this choke? Is it going to be by using your Tracer? Your Tracer's overwhelmed. You guys are thinking that you're going to establish room control? That's an interesting window. Yeah. The return of the Nano Echo. You're strong, you're not immortal, Nano Echo. That was gutsy, to say the least. Kind of fed. So they're taking advantage of their ability to go, hey, we are, so far what they've been trying to do is they're trying to work themselves into enclosed spaces, and they're trying to fight in that enclosed space. So what they're actually doing is they're going, hey, we are a poke team, we're a poke team that feels pretty comfortable about fighting you in close range as a brawl team. Because we have our Brig, we have maybe our Diva, we have our McCree, Fortified Orisa. This feels pretty strong. I see it. I'm not in love with it, truth be told. Yes, fighting in an enclosed space does not make either of these heroes particularly happy, so I can totally see the value in that. On the other hand, yeah, especially with them having the Diva. Okay, maybe it's stronger than I thought. This has gotten pretty hard dive poke. This isn't running the Zarya that you'd sometimes see. It's not running its own Brig. Yeah, I can see it. we're used to 'em seeing more double bubble, which this isn't actually. This is really just a poke dive comp. So yeah, this is reasonable. They're converting their poke comp into a brawl comp, and they're going, hey, you have to dive us in here or we will outpoke you, because we do. And if you don't dive us in here, that's not really true, but they're sort of setting that as bait. They actually would outpoke them if they took angles and such, but they're not willing to take angles and such. They're trying to bait it into closed spaces where this is enough of a dive and poke comp that it will lose. So, okay. DM is one of the best defensive uses and has a lot of movement, and the shotguns can be pretty good when getting close. Downside being her head hitbox is colossal, so it's quite easy to burst her down. Relatively, she can turn around, but yeah. But the reason we had Sigma instead of Diva before is what his numbers were just better, right? Like when he had, yeah, basically what happened is Sigma's numbers got a little bit absurd, and Diva did get gutted pretty hard. The reality is, if something like Defense Matrix exists in the game, that hero is going to get run. Diva's Defense Matrix has been nerfed and nerfed and nerfed repeatedly, and Sigma, with the barrier projection and recall got very close to being a second defense matrix. So it's like, okay, here's a substitute defense matrix that actually makes sense. Our value of Diva has decreased significantly, and now we have a substitute defense matrix that actually makes sense. So we're going to run that. But as the substitute has gotten less impressive, and the Diva has gotten a little bit better in general, there's a move back to the Diva, especially because of the greater flexibility. And that's part of why when people go, oh, look, Hog has been buffed, I sort of roll my eyes and go, it's very hard to make a Hog meta happen as an off tank. Or when people go, Winston Ball dive, that's going to be the thing, and I go, very hard to make that happen. Or when people go, even the Zarya stuff, where people are like, Ryan Zarya, no, and even the Winston Zarya, that was something that I've always been a little bit skeptical of. I, of course, understand how it works, but I'm like, I don't think this is real. And obviously it was real enough, but what I mean by I don't think this is real is I suspect that this is being settled on as a temporary meta, and that if we actually stayed on this patch, that we would move past this and Diva would find her way back in. Like, Diva would find her way back in as reigning supreme, in fact, because while yes, Winston Zarya does some cool things, Diva's just that good. The Diva really is just that good. If you don't have a defense matrix substitute, and Bubble is not a good enough defense matrix substitute, Diva's going to be meta. Most of the time, not a 100% hard rule, but is a pretty strong rule of thumb. Okay. They should be able to work their way in now. Yeah. Even without that pulse bomb, they should have been able to work their way in. That self-destruct will do nothing. You'll still protect your supercharger. So what we were seeing at the beginning of the match is Hadi thought that they were going to run the Orisa, but the rest of the team was less sure that Shock was going to abandon their Brig and Zarya. And now I wonder if we'll see swaps. Because we were in the situation where, because this was Diva and Mercy, I think that was why we actually saw them come out on this comp, as opposed to the Brawl comp, because the rest of Spitfire besides Hadi was showing standard Brawl before the scouting, at which point they swapped over. And then once they did their scouting, it was like, okay, they ran what we expected them to, so now we're going to run this comp that we decided is our comp for forcing the fight into closed doors and sort of to punish this poke dive. Now that they've swapped over to the Diva and the Lucio, I wonder if we're going to see swaps to put these guys back on a more traditional Brawl, or if they're going to keep running with it, especially since Supercharger just got used. Because the strategy is going to be less powerful. Trying to bait them into fighting you inside, fighting you in an enclosed space, which is so different from our first map. In the first map, it was Shock understanding the value of actually brawling to try to beat angles quickly. On this map, it looks like Spitfire is going, hey, we sort of understand how this works, and let's try to force you into an enclosed space to beat your staging, etc. But Sigma's got the feed? Okay. Uh, no swap from Hada yet. But that's reasonable. They only really added Zarya. Like, they didn't get super good in the brawl on Shock's side. Are they going to rotate into castle now? Well, Shock pulled the trigger and dove. Okay, that's fine. We don't care about that one. I want to see if Spitfire will rotate across. They got the cart where they needed to, and once they get past here, if they're going to rotate across and then play from here, or play from here type thing, or if they're going to play from here, then here type thing. I want to see if they nudge this forward one closed space at a time. No, they pull out their echo. Okay. That would not have been my solution. Nade leads to pulling the trigger on the Nano Winston play. I would not have answered that with, you just let that one go. You don't, after the big nade and elimination, answer with both of your support ults. Is Calyx going to swap now? I hope you're swapping Calyx. It would be embarrassing not to swap now. We're doing it. Okay. Okay. So Shock wants their own version of spawn camping. Nope, nope, Shock are giving up the spawn camp. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. So we're still going for a poke advantage with Spitfire. But you have to get that poke done, and I'm not sure you're going to have great angles to poke before Shock. Like, Shock get to pre-stage naturally around this choke and pull their trigger on their dive pretty quickly before Spitfire get to do much poke work. Like that. I think you win even without that beat. Yeah. Okay. So you're not going to spawn camp, you're just going to play around the kill box that is the choke for you. Okay. Tracer's set up. Winston's mostly set up. Don't do it. Don't pull the trigger early. You don't need to expose yourself, Smurf. As long as Glitzer doesn't get caught. Tried to brute force that too hard. Yeah, Shock pulled the trigger early and tried to brute force that. They didn't actually pull the trigger, but they tried to pull the trigger. You could tell they were going from safe staging to more dangerous staging, like we're about to jump. And in doing so, it's like, oh, well, now we can actually shoot at you, but it wasn't time to do that yet. The Spitfire hadn't actually walked forward. I can get more into this. So, like, the Spitfire hadn't actually walked their front line forward to be out here, where it was exposed, where it was diveable, where it's like, hey, our Winston can actually go, our Tracer actually comes in, our Hanzo can actually do it. Like, they needed to pull the trigger when their front line was out here. And they either pulled the trigger on the front line, or they pulled the trigger, go past them, and go on their back line. I either have their arguments for them, fine. But they were like, oh, your front line's about to come forward, but the front line was still here, in what's mostly a kind of safe space for them. And I think they were getting worried because their Zarya was getting pressured a little hard. Their Zarya was taking a little too much damage, but Zarya can go hard behind the cart that was here. So, like, That's okay. And even if Zarya has to leave and go wait over here, that's also okay because as the cart comes out a little bit more, while that's annoying, that now definitely puts the front line in what would be your kill box for your dive. So they unfortunately, because their Zarya was taking too much, or maybe for another reason, they started putting their Winston here, taking too much. They started going in with their Tracer for more than the pulse bomb play, which was too much. And yes, the Tracer did get the supercharger and the lamp dealt with, but like we're spending too much resource when we're not actually ready. They're not actually vulnerable to the dive yet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Огонь по готовности.
Fun grab. Fun grab dragon there. Late to deal with the lamp, but still get it. Mm-hmm. Got up to the point. You're using your lamp. Shocker trying to brute force a little bit with their beat there. And then that gets answered with supercharger, but that got plenty of supercharger value before that pulse bomb came out. Yeah. Can Hottie stay up? Can Hottie stay up?
Adaptive circuits
No.
engaged. Winston.
And that's it. Yeah.
Victory.
Might want to go back to the drawing board with that one. I understand what they did. Let me get my map here. I obviously understand, and we talked through what Spitfire's strategy was in terms of, hey, we're going to go into these enclosed spaces, and we're going to use our brawl or our extreme poke it's not even that powerful, because it's like, we're using our poke to force you into our enclosed space. No, we don't have to dive you. We have control of the point. We'll chill. We're good. We'll just wait. And you can't poke us that hard, because if you're playing in your enclosed space, you're not really taking angles on us. So, like, we're good. Maybe we'll peek you occasionally to throw stickies, to throw some left clicks with our echo, whatever. But mostly, we're pretty happy to just go, we don't need to go in there. You're going to rotate up to here. Maybe we dive on you as you're rotating between here and here. Maybe. But really, we're kind of happy to wait until you get to, like, here and deal with you. We might dive you in the rotation, and if we don't get you, that's fine. We'll just sort of walk away, hit and run tactics, etc., and then in your next rotation, we'll hit you type thing. We're not going to chase you in here unless we have a huge advantage. We're not going to chase you in here unless we have a huge advantage. We're not going to go try to 1v3 you with our Nano Echo who doesn't have Mercy support. Like, we're not going to do that. But so that's the first thing that I don't love about it. The second that Shock sort of got baited into. The second thing that I don't love about it is it took too many things. Like, they were able to do it because Shock wasn't on the Zarya. Shock was on the Mercy plus the really Shock was on the Mercy. The Echo doesn't matter, but Shock was on the Mercy plus the Diva here. But Shock has the ability to pretty easily go, okay, well, it's not that many swaps. Like, it's really not that hard for us to swap back to the Zarya and potentially to go to the Briggs. They went with the Lucio instead, but to potentially go to the Brig. And that's a perfectly normal double bubble comp that we all recognize. And that double bubble comp is less afraid to take that battle. It's got more brawl power, etc. So it's not like, aha, we've trapped you, etc. And if they go to this double bubble comp, Spitfire doesn't really want to be on this Orisa anymore, I don't think. Not unless they have Supercharger. I don't think they want it. But then they're in this situation where, hey, we're on a hero who's not Mei. We're on a hero who's not Lucio. Like, okay, So now you have to make like 3 swaps to adjust for the, and it's not fantastic. Like it's not a terrible strategy. I think it was fine to walk out with as a pocket strategy to sort of surprise the other team, but I'm not looking at this and going, "Oh yes, this was a great catch 'em strategy that will work for great catch them off guard strategy." Like it could be a catch them off guard strategy. They play into your hand a little bit, but I don't think it has any lasting place as a like we come out like this and then we can swap like this, or we come out like this and this is a counter to what you did. This is a you don't recognize what you're doing, so it might work. And in the end, it didn't. And I don't really like devoting time to learning. I actually don't like having a team spend time learning a strategy to catch a team off guard if you can avoid it, because it only helps you against one team and you've got a busy schedule ahead of you. You really can't afford to devote that much time to a strategy that is only going to work once, is only going to, isn't fundamentally pretty darn sound. Um, but hey, I could be wrong. I would be interested in seeing. I would be interested in seeing more. That maybe there's more that they're going to do here.
Ready for battle.
I don't think my more is going to include Mulfig on the Orisa instead of Hati. Okay, but we are going to see some more Orisa. Works for me.
Attackers incoming in 30
So Shocker back on the Brawl, and FD Gods on the Lucio. It's a Kree Brawl, and let's see what we actually get from Spitfire.
Five, four, three, two, one. Attackers incoming.
Sonic Arrow. Is this real? Sparker gets the Glycerin elimination, and we're walking out of spawn with this. We are walking out of spawn with this with full knowledge of what their comp is, so this is real. So we are choosing to fight Brawl with a hard poke comp. That's what this is. This is a poke hero, this is a total flex hero, this is a poke hero, this is a perfectly good poke Brawl hero, but this is a poke hero in this sense. This is a poke hero, this is a poke hero. We are running full poke, which is the counter to a close range Brawl team. Now, almost every modern Brawl is a hybrid. Like McCree is a poke Brawl hybrid, BAP is a poke Brawl hybrid, but like this is a Brawl team, large scheme. This is a poke team, large scheme. Poke beats Brawl in our counter triangle of sorts. So, okay, we're just going, hey, the meta is not strong enough in Brawl's favor right now to overcome its general rock, paper, scissors weakness to poke. Let's play some poke. Let's play some angles. Let's grind it out nice and slow. Don't let you guys start a Brawl with us. Brawl is looking to play a little more in enclosed spaces and go, hey, we're not letting you poke us out. We're not letting you poke us out. And then we just show up and run you over. You're not going to be able to play strong angles against a poke team, a real poke team as a Brawl team. You're going to have to use enclosed space. You're going to have to use explosive fights, which is something that Shock did an okay job of against Spitfire on the first map on Oasis, but they'd have to do a better job than they did to beat a more extreme poke team like we have here. Valet standing under bridge with no cover at the beginning here? Naturally. How does poke work on offense to begin with? It feels like poke is there to slowly give up space painfully, but then I have no clue how to take space in poke. Well, poke is not there to slowly give up space painfully. Poke is to go, hey, Poke might trade out space. Poke might give up a little bit of space in favor of a resource lead, but what's happening is Poke is saying we want to delay the Brawl phase until we're confident that we win it. This Poke team is still probably, when they win a team fight, going to be winning the team fight in the Brawl phase. The fight is going to end in a Brawl phase, but they would like to have a lead. That lead might be they have 2 eliminations. That lead might be they have broken Rhine Shield. They've drained DM, they've gotten out Amp, and they've gotten out Lamp, and they've brought Ryan down to half health, and they've brought McCree down to half health before they get into the brawl phase. They need to establish some level of lead before the actual brawl phase happens. That's what a poke team does. So a poke team might take space by going, hey, we threaten you with poke, and the brawl team recognizes that they can't let themselves get too far behind, so they need to go behind cover, and that might cause them to have to give up some cart space. And then the team might swing out and try to poke in here, and that might create a situation where either they explosively run out and try to challenge the team, or they don't like it and they retreat to the next place that they want to hold. And the poke team has to find a new angle to pressure them out to force them to leave, or they go, no, we don't like it, and we try to run them down, and maybe the poke team surrenders some of their space to do that, lets the brawl team approach them as they're trying to get their poke lead, and then once they think they have enough of a lead, they allow the brawl to actually happen. But that's the conceptual answer. Hopefully the other answer is you're about to see it, Crunch. And you see this. They're going, hey, our Echo pressures you from here, our Diva from here, our Orisa from here. Can you find someone to isolate and punish? If you can't find someone to isolate and punish, and that's hard right now because the people who you'd like to punish are all up on high ground where you can't get them except the Orisa, and the Orisa has Fortify. This is how a poke team takes space. So that Rhine shield has been chipped pretty hard. That Diva's been chipped pretty low on health. And you saw they decided we can't do it. Don't go in there, Mulfig. Good. And they earned themselves to the first choke like that. And Shock is playing too far in the open. I think this is going to go well for Spitfire because based on what I saw, Shock was sort of thinking about using this as an enclosed space but didn't do it hard enough. And now Shock are thinking this is enough of an enclosed space just because they've got this as cover, and it's not. Shock have to have a better understanding of what close space actually is. If you're playing a full brawl team into a full poke team, you have to understand that this is your cover, that this cave is your cover, that gas station is your cover. You have to defensively be playing this in such a way that you go, nope, I am going to stop the cart. I'm going to stop the cart from here. My Reinhardt can shield in this direction, or I can use Maywalls, or I can do whatever I want. I can stall from here. I can step my Reinhardt out, or I can step my Diva out to start the cart. And if you try to, and you can try to chip us forever, but it is going to take you an eternity to break through our Rhine Shield, our Rhine Health, our Diva Matrix, our Diva Health, our May Wall. It's going to take you an eternity to break through these resources while we just anchor cart. And if you get too close before you've broken through our resources, we're going to happily go try to punish you for your mistake. We're going to pop Speed Boost and run over your Diva without boosters. We're going to pop Speed Boost and go and run into your Orisa and go, nope, we'll take you down through Fortify if you really try to do it. We're going to go, nope, your Hanzo got too greedy and we're going to chase him down. You have to defensively understand how to use these parts of the map. I'm actually really excited to see this matchup. I just hope it plays out that both teams stick with this and that we see Shock start to play it better. You have to go, oh, we lost this or we don't think we can get this fine. Fine, we'll give it up and we'll now play for this cave. Or, oh, we lost that. Okay, we're now going to play for gas station, where we have to defend two directions at once, but you're not willing to fight us in here. You're just trying to poke us. You're just trying to spam us out from in here. And then, you get okay, if you make a mistake, we will speed out and try to punish you. And if we don't catch you, we'll retreat right back into our cover. And if we do get you, we might go, okay, there's less poke pressure on us while we're out in the open now because we got one of you. So now maybe we'll continue for another 3 seconds to look for another one. And if we can't, we'll still get ourselves back into a closed space and then work ourselves back into a better closed space. It requires coordination and it requires sort of acting as a leash and it requires understanding what points of the map you can use to stop the cart from. Right, they're pretending that this wall is cover, and this wall is cover for them against another brawl team, but it's nothing. It's nothing for them against a poke team, the team that has the flexibility to take high ground. They have to take a real closed space, like this cave or potentially gas station. And I've seen this, and I've actually seen, I did a video on this topic in the I did a video on this topic that was Forgiver versus whatever Sydney Bears, Direwolves. That's what they've evolved into. That covers just this, where teams seem to have forgotten in the modern era of angles are everything, angles are king. Teams seem to have forgotten how to play brawl into poke, and I'm really happy to see that. Hopefully, this is Spilo's influence. Spilo remembers how to punish that teams have forgotten how to do this, and said, well, if you're not willing to play with, if you're thinking too hard about angles, you feel like you can play in open space as a brawl team, which you can't, by the way, when teams are significantly better than you. When they're a little better than you on poke, you can go, no, we'll beat you with angles. When teams are a lot better than you at their poke aspects of their team, you can't play for angles. You have to play for closed space. And this obviously is way better poke aspects than this is in terms of the hero compositions. Again, if you have a little bit better poke on one team versus the other, more angles tends to win. If they just crush you with their amount of poke value, you gotta play for the closed spaces. Okay, if Shax is just gonna get caught, that might change things. Because now they're gonna get less punished hard for playing out in the open. Yeah. Can you take them down? No, you didn't take down Kree. Okay, wait for your damage to come back. Start to take your angles again. No, that's not a big enough lead. Unfortunate. So you see this happening, and this is just Shax trying to brute force this. Shax doesn't understand what he's doing. He's thinking, yes, I have my ult, so I'm going to go in hard. And he immediately gets chipped to half and then pops his ult because of it. But, like, Shock still have full resources. Shock haven't spent their lamp. Shock haven't spent their ice wall. Shock haven't spent their. I don't even think they've spent their amp. They haven't spent their ice block. They're not particularly low on Rhine shield. Like, you absolutely cannot force this fight. This team is not currently duplicate, just having a duplicate on the board, an Echo or a Diva copy, because that's what Shaq's copy is here, is not enough to go, yes, now we beat you guys in a brawl. No, we have to build a bigger lead than that before we force the brawl as a heavy poke team into a brawl team. This is not going to go well.
Diva.
I say as Sparker finds an angle. These teams are just determined to prove me wrong. Okay, fine. You're going to debate me one team fight, and you're going to debate me the next team fight. You're both wrong. I hate you both, but whatever. Sometimes brute forcing things works. It shouldn't, but sometimes it does, because there are individual differences in skills, and of course the other team doesn't understand it perfectly either. Man, Shaq has quite the career from pro basketball to movies to pro Overwatch. Maybe not the same person. Probably the same person. Probably the same person. And that's just garbage. I mean, Shock don't have a choice, but that's just a free win for Spitfire right there. And that happens. Some of the ults that you have to engage through as Brawl, because you have to play tight like that, are just absolutely painful. Because, again, they don't really have an option to go, well, let's come from 3 different directions so that Dragon Strike can't punish us. They don't really have that option because, again, then they're too easy to punish. They will not win poke wars with angles against a team like this. And a team like this is more able to go, okay, let's send in our Diva plus Echo Mercy to go punish type thing. Why try to force brawl here? Why not match poke or go dive? Because it's not what they're trained for. Teams haven't been doing enough of this. Again, I haven't been watching a ton of OWL lately, so maybe that's changed. But teams haven't been doing a ton of this, and I did see this in collegiate. Teams have been doing a lot of this, and teams have been doing a lot of double bubble. Teams have not been doing a lot of this. When teams have gone poke, they've mostly done a ball zen version of poke, but the belief generally has been that these two things are, we have things that are meta that are not this, and oh, brawl is strong right now, and brawl is meta because it's strong enough to overdo its counter. Well, very few people are actually running brawl's counter. From a conceptual standpoint, you don't get very much practice against it. And it becomes how strong is Brawl really strong enough to beat its counter? We've seen some gentle Rhine nerfs, we've seen some McCree nerfs. Like, is Brawl really still strong enough to beat its counter? Was it ever truly strong enough to beat its counter, or was its counter wasn't seeing a ton of play because its counter doesn't love it when dive is in play and dive is also okay? It's one of these things where how hard was Brawl locked as the meta? Not very hard. So the answer to why they're not swapping is this is what they've practiced, and they might be in a little bit of disbelief that this can beat them. They might be going, no, this isn't good enough. And the truth is, if they played Brawl right, I don't think this would beat them. If they understood, okay, our next hold is right here, I don't think they would be in much danger of losing. Like, it would be okay, fine, you got first from us, but we're ultimately going to stop cart here, and you're going to run out of time right here. Like, it would have been a slow drain of the clock through first, then they ultimately drop first, perhaps. Then maybe they get another team fight or two here, and then ultimately they stop the cart here, and the match ends here. And, that's not an amazing Route 66 push. And that would have been a perfectly serviceable defense for the Brawl team. But I suspect it's a case of they're in disbelief that, poke could beat them, but also they don't remember why poke isn't generally run. And the reason poke isn't generally run is because brawl teams can do the turtling that I'm describing, but most of them haven't practiced the turtling I'm describing in forever. But they could swap to dive. That would be an option, but there's probably a little bit of, hey, we sort of have our ults, hey, we don't believe it, etc. Okay, so we're coming through. It's not the best supercharger. And that's exactly how you're supposed to take the engage. That's well done from Shock. Should be enough to win it. Even with the ults that Spitfire can use, should be enough to win it. That's fine. That's less fine. That was a good adjustment from Spitfire. Even if Spitfire ultimately lose this, that was a good adjustment from them. And you see, now they're sort of getting this turtle thing. Like, what Shock did here, Shock did an engage, a short-range engage. They came through here, they had cover most of the way, and they came from closed space into fighting the Brawl team in closed, or the Poke team in closed space, which is not what they want. They probably popped their beat earlier than they needed to, so that's not amazing, but that's conceptually what they want to do, and go do that. And Spitfire made a good reaction, and somehow Spitfire was able to mostly get out of there and flip the point, but that's not the end of the world for Shock, except that they'd spent their beat, because then they go, we can anchor the point from this closed space. We can, as Shock, put our Reinhardt right here and not let the cart move, sort of like they're doing here. Unfortunately, this has kind of continued to evolve, and now we again have the, hey, sending a Dragon Strike through a closed space is powerful when that Brawl team is on the closed space, but this was a pretty well-driven fight from both of them. Don't spread out, Shock. Please don't. You can spread out a little bit for their approach, but as they get closer, you need to tighten up. You need to tighten up into closed space. You can do this when they're far away, but as they get closer, you need to tighten up into a closed area to play the map from. Better. Good. Sure. Mirrored windows isn't the best approach because your guys' poke still doesn't match theirs. I'd really just not give them an angle. Like, remember, Spitfire can't push the cart right now unless they're willing to drop their diva. And if they drop their diva, sure, then you then you use your window and you send your Rhine out to go fight him. But like, you didn't need to window because you're not going to use your window. That must have just been habit. You needed to just take hard cover and not let them shoot at you, because you don't need to poke back with your McCree or anything. You just need to be like, we literally don't need to let you shoot at us unless you're willing to put someone on the cart. If you're willing to put someone on the cart, we're going to contest that, and yes, then you get to shoot at us. But we're going to threaten that person on the cart hard. We're going to make them have a real risk of losing their mech. We're going to make them booster away immediately. We're going to make them use Fortify immediately, type thing. Oh, those Dragon Strikes are coming so fast. I wonder if they're intentionally funneling ult charge to him in one fights. I mean, Sparker's good, so like they don't have to be doing that. Sparker might just be being good. I worked with Sparker briefly back in tier 3.
Cease your resistance.
And if it gets away from you, you're going to be in trouble, Shock. Yeah, it sort of got away from you too much. Now you're fighting in the open. The beat is not going to be enough to cover it. Oh, but the window might. Yeah, okay. But this breaks down better in Spitfire's favor. Yeah. If the comps break down into like 4v4 in the open, Spitfire's comp is more independent. Like each of the heroes on Spitfire's team does a better job of going, we can function independently. We can sort of function in a simplified fight better than the Brawl stuff can. Yeah, they don't want that. Shock really need it to be a 6v6. But Shock will get another stop. And they did do a good job there. They drained cart time quite nicely. And they're still on pace, potentially, to make the stop right here where we talked about, because they did a good job here. If they'd done a really good job, they could have made the stop on first. But because they did a good job here, draining time. And again, they didn't have to win a ton of team fights. They just needed to drain a lot of time. They've only really got to win one team fight to win your defense. And you don't even have to win that team fight. You're just going to win it because all you really need to do is not let them be comfortable putting people on the cart. And eventually the match ends. But really, they'll feed on the cart, so yeah. It's probably that wasn't great. They got a little too delayed in getting here, and it's almost past them. They really needed to, they might have to, at this point, just use speed boost to rotate over to here. Like, hard rotate over to here, and accept that we're going to stop the cart either from here or from here, rather than here. It's a little past where you can reasonably stop it from here. And it's worth it just investing speed boost to swap, because you're spending extra resources having to come out this far to try to stop the cart. And yeah, like that. Okay, you can go this way, but I think you're going to be late getting here now if you go this way. I don't think this is your play. Oh, please don't think this is closed space. No, you're thinking a corner is closed space. It's not. This is not good enough closed space. This would be closed space. I mean, this would be a legit choke. This would be a legit corner against another against another Brawl team, excuse me. But you had to be inside. You had to be inside. You had to be inside to wait, to force your objective pressure. This is not good enough. They're going to go, oh, hey, we'll put our window over here. We'll put our Sparker up here. Maybe we'll put a Diva up here. Like, there's too much they can do to punish you. This is not good enough closed space. I expect to see Spitfire take third. Or take second. And that did not need to happen. Okay. Better adjustment from Shock. This is almost the right place to be playing. Once the cart goes a tiny bit further, this is the right place to be playing. Okay, good adjustments from Shock. Yeah, good job. And you saw they adjusted, they went, wait, this isn't good enough, and they went and waited in the closed space. So they effectively surrendered these options for holding the cart, and then went to here to hold the cart. And this is a fine place to hold the cart from. I'd have liked the cart to be a little bit further forward before this became their spot, but so be it. They sort of overtaxed themselves by overreaching, just like they overtaxed themselves by overreaching back here. It gives them way more Rhine Shield to shoot at, way more angle options to shoot at that Rhine Shield when you make your Rhine go out that far to be stopping the cart. Okay. I would have liked to see both these teams play that better, but I get it. It's a matchup that hasn't been done, that's not getting done a ton, because the belief is that Brawl is stronger than Poke right now, so you're mostly seeing a, hey, that belief isn't being tested effectively. And if it was tested more, you'd see both sides sharpen in their Poke versus Brawl and Brawl versus Poke belief, and we did see some more of that in collegiate. I actually specifically had to work with my team on training them to fight Poke because Boise was actually pretty good at running Poke. So we specifically had to go over that. But clearly, it's not something that either side has trained a ton on, or we'd be seeing Shock have adapted to it faster, and Spitfire perhaps not yeet duplicate into a fight where they haven't built up any sort of lead.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds.
Okay. So now we're going to see kind of the same thing. And this is what we were talking about before, where Spitfire are on defense, which means they get to pre-set up with their angle, at least for the first fight a little bit. So they're more willing to run the Sigma here. This is very similar to what they tried to do on their Eichenwald attack, but they're more willing to run the Sigma instead of the Diva because they can preset the Sigma in positions.
3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming.
Shock are on a Brawl with double Poke in the McCree Hanzo. Spitfire trying something similar to what they did on Ike, except they're doing it on defense. It's kind of similar to what they did on attack too, but not really. I mean, what they finished on attack anyway. That's not how you're going to do it. If you're going to run the Sigma, please don't stack the Sigma on your Orisa. That's better. That's a better way to run your Sigma Orisa. Don't eat long-range fire strikes, Parker. You're really not getting enough poke work done on these guys to engage. That's not working. And the reason that they're not getting enough poke work done is because they're not split well enough for their angles. Okay. That's fine. That's usually what happens. When you make a poke stop, it ends up being late on first point here, but you do need to actually win this fight. Get another limb, lock it in. Get another limb, lock it in. Good. Now don't get punished and set up for positions. Set up for crossfire. Mulvig, we need you to have some crossfire. Shax is backing you up. We need you to have some crossfire. If you could set up like over here, that would be fine with me. You'll get an early warning system from Shax if they try to group push this as like 5 or 6 or something. But we need you to have more of a crossfire. Yes, I know it gives you like no influence on the choke. I don't care. Okay. That'll work. Why are you... okay, whatever, I'll do. Are we now going to see swaps from Shock? We've got Nero over back on the May instead of the Hanzo. But are we going to see more? No, we're running the same rotation. And now we're going to punish it with the Fire Strike, but we can't actually push in there to finish them off. Cart rolled back a fair amount. That doesn't quite flip it, though it's close. Oh boy. Oh boy. Not... Yeah, Glitzer has to go down there. Good. And now you can easily drop and take that brawl. This is perfectly fine. Okay, so they're posting Sigma on gas station because they expect Shock is going to rotate correctly every time now. Shock is not rotating correctly. Shock is saying, nope, we're going to push low ground, which means our Sigma would have had more value on the cross high ground. But hey, there's our Sim TP plus our beat. We try to answer with Rally, but it might not be enough because we did not get a ton of poke done to them. Some back and forth trading, but we have more ults to spend in Supercharger for Spitfire. And Supercharger is a powerful ult. Reset to your high ground. Reset to your high ground. Reset to your high ground. No, unless it's blocking a bullet. Lamp won't get eliminated by High Noon unless someone is using the lamp as a physical obstruction between them and the High Noon bullet. Just like High Noon will break shields, High Noon doesn't actually target shields, but if the shield is in the way, it'll hit it. I mean, Rally to sort of allow them to sort of help weather it. Rally's better than beat. Rally to sort of help them weather it, and then they also had the Supercharger. Yeah, it was good. If they make the same play a second time, it's going to be harder for Spitfire to handle. But obviously, they don't have much. They've only got tank ults for Shock. They'll probably get Blizzard pretty quick, though. And you can't eat Blizzard nearly as reliably with Sigma compared to Diva. So this could still be the point for Shock right here if they make the same TP play. It's a lot of shield being spent there. A lot of shield being spent there, Super. TP played down there this time. Okay, and now they're understanding the closed space again. And now they're flipping the map. And we're going to have to drop early. And Hadi did not get... Hadi just didn't get the... What do you call it off? Fortify off. Doesn't matter. Shock will cap. That's a bad Dragon Strike. That fight was over. What do you mean temporal? Velk is so much better than Riley. It's just 30 armor per second. Oh, that was tilting. 30 is worse than 55. That's not how it works. Or 30 is worse than 60. For those of you who don't know, he's referencing the session we did, or the section yesterday we did, responding to a just climb with mercy from bronze to plat by healbotting, and we really got into it and had lots of commenters there. It was quite a fun session, so I recommend you guys check it out. The poster takes the affirmative for that stance. I take the against for that stance, obviously. Okay. Spitfire have come back. They've put Mulfig on the ball here, which to me suggests that they're in greater panic than they should be. Mulfig to ball would be a good swap if the cart was like here and they were in like, hey, shoot, we got to do this, etc. I don't necessarily want to run full-time Orisa ball here. Diva or Sigma both do better things for us right now than the ball does. But Ball's a good poke hero, so I don't hate it. You can knock them away from the Reinhardt, or knock the Reinhardt out of the way so that your poke heroes can get eliminations. That TP setup took longer than setting up TP play in my ranked game. Yeah, that was a lot of shield that was spent. Like, that play almost collapsed because of how much pressure was allowed to be put on Super before it happened. Mm-hmm. Okay. You don't have enough of a lead yet, Spitfire. There you go. Now you force the brawl. Yep. And again, it might look like, oh no, they gave up a ton of cart space. It's terrible. But you'll notice they didn't rush that first team fight on second, and it's important, and they did the same thing on first. They didn't rush the first team fight. They let themselves get a lead, let themselves get a lead, let themselves get a lead, didn't get scared, and then were able to win once they'd built up enough of a lead. And now, sure, the cart looks like it's one team fight away, and the cart is one team fight away. The cart wasn't stopped up here or anything, but Shock have to advance through this same open space, every time. And they're not gonna have the cart to help them as cover these times as they advance through the open space against this poke team. And the Shock themselves literally have to get through the open space. So like the cart's gonna roll back a bunch like it did the other time, and they're set up to win multiple fights. Like the first one is the hardest effectively for the defense as the poke team. That's unfortunate. Shock got through there too cheaply. And now Shock really did just get back to, hey, the cart is here, and Spitfire did not get enough done in the poke phase. Sim TPs are good for that. Huh. Okay. Had the slam plus Dragon Strike, wasn't perfectly lined up. Into the minefield. Just ults everywhere. Ult Bonanza. Sparker goes down. Orissa's gonna have to force the cart. And we have a rally that helps with the brawl. Oh, almost. And then they turn it. And that's part of what we were talking about in terms of the brawl comp does not break down as well as most other comps. Most comps break down into duels, 2v2s, 3v3s better than brawl does. And you see that shine through here. Because even though that fight started to go against Spitfire, they were able to turn it as the fight broke down. And forcing it again. Spitfire are a little too stacked on point. You don't need to all be on point here, but clearly it's going to be fine. Okay. That was fun to see. I'm glad we got to see that. I would like to see both teams polish that. Unfortunately, I think if both teams polish that, you'll end up in a situation where the brawl teams, once they understand how to polish it, will somewhat consistently beat the poke teams. But I did like seeing that, especially now that we're seeing a hit scan nerf. But different patch for these guys. So I enjoyed seeing that. I'm happy when we see like, oh, like let's go get the thing that tests the thing, and Spitfire won this one. And again, cool to see that. I would the poke versus brawl type thing, and especially not the Balzen poke, the Orisa poke versus brawl thing. Again, we definitely saw situations where Shock could have driven that better, though, both on their defense, especially on their first point defense. They put it together mostly for their second point defense, but their first point defense was kind of tragic. But also there was more room for Spitfire too. There was room for Spitfire to upgrade how they drove it too, but Shock could have. I think there's more room for Shock to upgrade how they did it, and it was already close to put that in perspective. So happy to see it. I'm enjoy that we got to see that. We see how Spitfire got the win, but this is the type of strategy that as long as teams can get scrim practice against this, this isn't the sort of thing that Spitfire should get to repeat a lot. Like, as long as teams actually go, oh, right, poke is a threat that we have to be ready for, and how do we handle poke? On payload maps, oh right, we find the places, 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 and the places, and the places that we can turtle in, and we use those to control the cart's movement. As long as teams actually get some practice, it's hard to just do, but as long as you actually get some practice doing it in scrims, shouldn't be too much of a threat here. That said, nice wild card to pull out, and hey, I certainly enjoyed watching it. Oh, hey Nick. Hey Nick, how you doing? Yes, I do think Brawl is better overall. I do think Brawl is better overall than Poke, in part because Brawl can do what Shock eventually adapted and did on second point for their defense, where they can go, hey, we can turtle like this, and we don't actually have to beat you really in any fights except the last fight, and the only reason we're beating you in the last fight is because of the cart pressure. We might beat you in some fights. If you come out and give us things to punish, we will absolutely run them down with Lucio Speed Boost and try to punish them and try to eliminate them and then turn that into a sort of team fight win before we go back to our cover. But yes, Brawl I do still think is better, and I think next patch that'll be I'd almost say even more true because of hit scan nerf, but the thing is the hit scan that sort of most affects is McCree, which is a mainstay in Brawl, so maybe that's not fair to say. But yes, I do think Brawl is better. That said, Poke in general beats Brawl, but Brawl is still there's a part of the reason why Brawl is more meta than Poke right now is because Brawl is tuned above Poke right now in a general sense. I think the real question becomes dive versus Brawl. I mean, there's a little bit of that with, hey, is it double bubble? Is it Brawl type stuff? We've seen questions like that, but we were seeing it. We were seeing it before the bans that we had for the last monthly tournament thing. We were seeing it drift more towards double bubble. The answer seemed to be crystallizing towards double bubble and owl, but that hasn't full stuck in contenders anywhere. No one's. It's clearly still that hasn't full stuck in contenders in the western regions rather. So that's still open for debate. And as you see, we just saw a bunch of brawl in this match, so that's up for debate for sure. Okay, we are 2 hours and 45 minutes into the stream. We've got 21 viewers. My energy levels are okay. Yeah, let's do another map. The highest DPS poke heroes are projectile, except for Bastion. I don't know if the hit scan nerfs are going to be good for Brawl, with projectiles getting extremely buffed. Yeah, if only projectile heroes were good enough in the first place to matter. Echo, Hanzo. That's about where the list stops. But yes, it should be brought more into balance by the hit scan nerfs. It should be brought more into balance by the hit scan nerfs.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds.
But yes, the meta is up in the air. Some. Okay, so Shock look like they want to run a poke dive. And Spitfire, Shock are defending with a poke dive. They're pretty committed to that. Spitfire can still make up their mind. I don't think they're going to stay on a poke comp if they see that Shock are on poke dive. Poke dive is too much in Shock's favor. I mean, they sort of did do this previously, and then they tried to bunker, but not with that DPS pair, right? Right? Echo Hanzo Sim that one time on Lijiang Tower. That's true. That's true. But Sim's a hit scan hero, guys. I hate to break it to you, but like her primary fire is the beam. It is. It is. That said, she's more designed like a projectile DPS hero in that, hey, a lot of her power, she has a strong ult. Wall is one of the best ults. Yeah. One of the better ults, at least. It's certainly better than Tac Visor and High Noon and Infocytes, that's for sure. So you guys are doing this. You're rotating in with your Orisa comp. Shock should just set up a box to dive on you. It's a little late, Chubin. Let him out. Let him come out a little more. Just take cover against them. They can't pressure point from there. Take cover against them, and then dive on them once they actually come out further. Chobit, you can't get chipped that hard. I told you, man. You wasted boosters. Okay, I know you can't hear me, but like, you're now hesitating to call your dive because look how... Let's watch this. Look how weak Shock is before they've even hit their dive. This isn't like they've hit their dive and they're weak. This is like they're trying to stay staged too aggressively when they can't. Like, you can't do this. You need to make these guys walk out a little bit more, which they will because they want the point eventually. And then you get more aggressive with your staging. They're staging too aggressively too early is the issue that's happening here. If you wait till now... If now you pulled your dive off, if now you went, not even pulled your dive off, but now you moved from passive staging positions to more aggressive staging positions, you'd take a little bit of damage while getting to your more aggressive staging positions, and then you dive, they'd have way more health, and they'd be hitting a dive right now. And it would be amazing. It would be golden. It would be the best. No. I get something in like the 70 to 80 range on Super Chat. Something like that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't Super Chat, but that's just how the YouTube equation works. I mean, it is their platform. It's fair that they get something. If you want to go more directly, the PayPal is in the Discord, and obviously the percentage on that is basically 100. But, yeah. So we're pushing through. And that's going to be the cap. And again, Shock just like are staging way too aggressively for what this is. It's the same thing that happened in some ways on Eichenwald. But they're just staging way too aggressively against this Orisa comp, and they're getting poked. They're like forgetting that when you run dive, you start in like relatively safe staging positions, or you start in like your pre-fight positions, and then you move to staging positions. And staging positions are a little risky. They're not something you can hold forever. There's something that you're likely to get punished if you stay in. There's something that you're likely to be paying a bit of health to have earned, and then you dive type thing. So you can't stay in your staging positions very long. Do you take crypto? I don't think I'm set up. No, I'm not currently set up to take crypto. If that's something you guys are interested in, I can set up to take it, but that's the first time I've been asked that question, so no. Okay. So you're gonna try that dive. Let's take a look here. You're here. Your bubble just got used. And you're gonna pull the dive off without your bubble, but with a nano. Again, you can let them in a little more. Like right now, it's just Orisa where you want to get her. You sort of want to dive on people when you're playing dive, and this is like basic ladder stuff, guys. You sort of want to dive on people after they've exposed themselves, after they've put themselves on your side of the choke to jump on. Oh, $10 coming in from Nick. Thank you for the super chat, Nick. I really do appreciate that. If you have any questions or comments or topics you want me to cover, do let me know, but thank you for that. Okay, so as I was covering here, before the $10 super chat from Nick, thank you. We want to go ahead and let the team come in a little bit. If we want to jump on the front line, so be it. We can jump on the front line. But our true preference would be the front line comes in, and then we jump on the back line when the back line comes in past this choke. That would be our true preference. But this is just like, we're just jumping on Orisa. She has a window that she can walk in front of to get increased healing that I don't particularly like. She has Fortify, so she's not the best dive target. We don't have our bubble. Like, this is being rushed again.
Time to raise my APM. Rally power to forward shield.
And you have to jump out. And now we're in this situation where now they get to take space for free because our Winston just leaped out. We don't have Nano anymore. Our Diva just had to reposition. Like, now they get to push in through what should have been our hard pressure, eliminate them when they go in here box. Now they sort of have a couple seconds to walk through it for free.
Adaptive circuits engaged.
Oh boy. Oh boy. What opening do you see that... What opening do you see? This is as bad as... Like, first we have Spitfire on Route 66 first point. Just go, hurrah, go in! Duplicate is enough! And now we have Shot going, hurrah, go in! Duplicate is enough! Like, we don't want to dive like this. Like, dragging all of our dive in one direction out past, again, the box, the kill box is on this side of the choke, not out here. If you'd set up over here, and like up here, you could be going, hey, we're going to hit our dive out here. That would be a thing, but we are not set up to dive out here. You have to see a giant opening to let yourself get dragged out like this. Like, you have to have a giant lead. They have to have made a big mistake for you to let yourself get dragged out like this.
Diva. Nerf this.
Mm-hmm.
Checked out. I'm back in the fight. Nerf this.
Which apparently they had. Let's take a look. Teams disappoint me on a macro standpoint sometimes. It happens.
Adaptive.
So we're jumping out. We're going out. We're using a bunch of burst power in all of our dive abilities. And we just have nowhere to go. We just have nowhere to go on Spitfire. Okay. I mean, Spitfire is poke, not brawl, so this works a little bit better, being lazy about your dives. But
I'm back in the fight. Nerf this.
from a macro standpoint, winning that is not necessarily wrong, but winning that cleanly and that overwhelmingly is surprising. And into a brawl team, you would have expected to lose that if you dove them like that. But this isn't a brawl team, and that's fine. The principles are a bit different.
I'm gonna have to shoot you down.
Mm-hmm.
Taking off. Helden sterben nicht.
We're Valking? Okay. Again, we're Valking before they've pushed in at all. We can do it because they're playing tight. Yeah, I see it. We're deciding that what we want to do is rather than let this poke team get in, we're saying, hey, the poke team is stacking relatively tight for us, so we're wanting to hit our hard dives while they're stacked tight, because a poke team will lose to a dive team, even if the dive team comes in from one direction. This is Shock saying we haven't figured out how to fix our, hey, we're getting poked too hard situation, which is actually just tuck harder, let them come in a little and dive on them in the box. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to do this one-dimensional dive, but it's going to work because Spitfire is stacked. I wonder what would happen if Spitfire adjusted and split up a little bit and sort of baited this dive, if Shock would take it, because that would be the next evolution of this back and forth game. They're both sort of doing it wrong, but it's going to work for Shock if Spitfire stays stacked like this. Spitfire sort of has to stack like this in some ways because they need to get through. But if Shock is willing to follow them out like this, if they choose not to stack, that could be punished. Hey Temp, should Shock be looking for London to move into position and then dive, or are there any key cooldowns that Shock should be looking for to inform their dive regardless of position? It's more positional based, but you'll overrule that and go like, hey, Shock London has spent important cooldowns, so we're willing to take a worse dive, a dive that uses less angles, a more one-directional dive because they don't have Lamp anymore, because they don't have Fortify anymore, that sort of thing, because they don't have Bash anymore. Like, you'd potentially be willing to go, hey, we're willing to take what would be a worse dive because stuff has come out. I would like them to be doing positional dives, though, when the backline enters here. When the backline enters here, I would like Shock to tuck very safely, be very hard to poke out, sort of let Spitfire in a little bit, and then dive as their backline walks through here. That's what I would like to see happen. It's not happening. Shock did not make that adjustment. Instead, Shock went, hey, we're losing when we wait too long on our dive because they're getting poked too much because they're staging too aggressively. So let's fix this by diving through on them, and that's going to work as long as Spitfire stays stacked tight for them here. As long as Spitfire stays stacked tight, yes, their one-dimensional dive is going to work because the dive heroes are going to do a better job in this close range fight than the poke heroes when the poke heroes are all stacked on each other. If the poke heroes were spread out and could cover for each other a bit better, it wouldn't, but the poke heroes sort of have to stay like this because if the poke heroes spread out as if they were going to go this way and threaten different directions, the dives absolutely would happen over here and hard punish them, and they'd be too punishable. So in some sense, it's actually a good job taking advantage of the map geometry from Shock, as long as they understand that if these guys spread out, go punish, and if they spread out back here, you just ignore them and you don't dive onto this. You then do actually have to let this person come in, who will then be even more alone if they come in, or because they won't come in, their friends come back and join them, and then when their friends come back and join them, then you do your one-dimensional dive again. But even better could be, hey, we're going to set up our divers out here. And if we want to dive them out here, so be it. We'll do our dive in like this, but we'll also do our dive like this, and this would be even stronger. Is the poke even that good with Tracer at the moment? I feel like this is closer to anti-dive. The poke is fine. They have an Orisa, a BAP, and a Echo. The poke's fine. It's not amazing. It's not amazing. Sparker is there to help shoo things into their poke range and to help stop them from getting dove. Yeah, there are enough elements of anti-dive here, or almost enough elements of anti-dive here with the Brig and the Tracer. But it is still trying to leverage that it has a little bit better poke.
Bombs away.
Was a pretty expensive ult fight for Spitfire that's not going to go their way. And now if Spitfire are going to finish the map, it is probably not going to be with time, because that was their rally and their supercharger. Grouping means, well, but you end up grouped for your dive anyways, because even if you dive from over here and back here, you all end up like this, and then the Valk still bounces between each of them. Like there's not a problem there. It's just their staging isn't as protected by the Valk, but you don't need their staging to be Valked. You want to have the damage boost on them as they're coming in for the dive. Unless you mean Spitfire, but Spitfire doesn't have a Valk. Or do you mean you think Shock is set up as anti-dive? Shock is definitely set up as a poke dive comp right now. Okay, so now they've come in a little bit. Now they've come in a little bit, and this is where we would pull the trigger if we feel we have enough people alive. Yeah, if we have our cooldowns, which we don't because D.Va's using boosters right now, we would pull the trigger for our dive right now. D.Va was a little off sync there. And they back out. And that's not the end of the world. Don't just trade with them, Shock. Don't just trade with them. Okay. Mm-hmm. And obviously, unlike the last matchup, now Shock are in the comp that functions better in a messy fight, a 3v3, a 4v4, etc., than Spitfire. Brawl functions the worst of the three major comp archetypes in a messy fight. Dive functions the best in a messy fight of the three major comp archetypes. In a messy, broken down, simplified fight is what I mean when I say messy. Like it's become 3v3, 4v4, 4v3, whatever type thing. Doesn't have all of the synergy of its 6v6. Mm-hmm. They're going to try to go off that hard, that duplicate. I don't think that's enough nerfs this is, guys. There we go! Not enough self-destructs. Not enough self-destructs. Mm-hmm.
60 seconds remaining.
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of doing an archetype of dive beats poke here, guys. Do we want to get off poke? It's too late, but hey. Like, dive beats poke, you haven't put in enough anti-dive elements into your poke comp. Your poke isn't even that much better than the poke dive comps.
30 seconds remaining.
Cease your resistance.
Mm-hmm. I don't think you're gonna touch. I mean, you might touch, but I don't think you're gonna cap the point. Kelk's touches barely. This is just clean up.
Adaptive circuits engaged. Brigitte.
Not quite 6 though. Marginally better poke with Bap and Orisa. Yeah, it's a very minor poke lead that we're running into for our poke team. I liked the poke versus Brawl matchup. Like, I thought that was interesting and cool. And hey, let's try to catch a team off guard because most teams have gotten pretty far from practicing their Brawl v poke. They don't remember how to handle payload maps. I thought that was cool. I'm less a fan of trying to keep running your sort of poke comp into the clearly poke dive comp. Yes, Shock was perhaps not handling it as cleanly as I liked, but it has a lot of advantage, the dive into the poke. And I'd say the fundamentals for it are less punishing if you're not practiced, etc. And I'd say people are naturally a little more practiced on how to play dive than they are on brawl into poke.
Ready for battle.
Just because of what people like to play. And it sort of is as simple as that. It's not as simple as that, but that's part of it. Like, players like to play the dive heroes. People get some practice on them. People don't really like to play a turtle playstyle. That's something you specifically have to practice. That's not something you're going to get a ton of accidental practice on ladder. You have to actively go seek that practice to stay warm on it. Okay, so Shock here
3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming. Defend
are going to play a double bubble now. So like they like their D.Va on defense, they like their Zarya on offense, it looks like. And Spitfire are going with a harder poke comp this time. They've got their Mercy Bap plus their Orisa, Echo, and Ashe, and that's not terribly surprising. First point, Anubis has always been strong for poke comps. It's a good spot. It's got hay. It's hard. The opponents only have one real way into the choke. Yes, then at the choke they break into alternate direction options, but it's a little more restrictive than most. There's lots of good places that you can put poke people at. There's good places to support that with dive if you want. So this isn't too weird. We've seen lots of Widow holds, Junkrat Widow holds, etc. over the years. Seeing a Orisa holds, all those things, bunkers and the like on Anubis First are not at all rare. The problem that you run into is if you don't full hold, it does not convert well. Poke is not very good at defending second point Anubis. Like, it's pretty bad at it, especially compared to how good it is at first. So I wonder if Spitfire would have run this comp here if they'd made progress or capped second. This is a bit of an all-in because you pretty regularly, if you lose first, lose second because you destroy your ult economy when you switch, or you're defending with heroes that are not very good at defending Anubis second. So I'm curious which we're going to, if we would have seen it, but this is totally reasonable in my mind as a, hey, we've got to make, we have to full hold, because if we don't full hold, we're going to lose type situation. Dive can be a bit more freeing in position, can be individual as long as your comms are great. Sort of. I mean, we did see how Shock got punished on first for their dive positioning.
Time to raise my APM.
Because they were too aggressive with their staging before it made sense. That's bad. That needed to not happen. Yeah, this is over. Okay, Smurf didn't make it with the jump. But still very over. It's not a position that's used that often, and we just saw it used twice. Okay. That little spot right there. Yeah, you guys have to hold it. It is correct to all in with your ults here, Spitfire. And now you lose. Yep. The window Valk wasn't enough. Orisa shielded early. Yeah. You're gonna swap and you're gonna get rolled by ults. Everyone but Hottie should swap right now. I mean, not everyone, but like you guys should swap into a real comp except for Hottie right now. As in, get off Ashe, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Didn't get supercharger value. Beat and grab and dragon do things, and that's the point. Okay, that's not terribly surprising. Do we want to look at the last one? I think there's only one more map. Let's see how long this one is. Because we are over 3 hours on this. Let's take a look.
Ready for battle.
Probably willing to do that. Let me take a quick look. That should be fine. That's not a big deal. Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and review this last map. Okay, so we saw in the last map, I mean, we talked through that. We had the situation where we weren't, Shock was staging too aggressively, and then they adjusted that by perhaps pulling the trigger on their dives early, but that was going to work into the poke. We would have liked to see further adaptations from Spitfire, but we didn't. And now let's focus on this map.
Capture the objective.
Super's in on Rhine, FD God's in on Lucio. Okay. So we are basically at the brawl again, except Shock. Glister has liked that sim more than Sparker has. So this time we didn't even have Sparker open on the sim, though, for the first fight. That wall is a big deal. That forced the early lamp from Shock. Rippa, what happened? We got the wall out of them first. We got the lamp out of them first. Now you need to use your lamp to win. You literally have to like be like, we lamp, and our team aggresses with the lamp. Like that's what needs to happen before you lose Blaze. That needed to happen. Okay. Oh well. Now we lose. And by we, I mean Spitfire. I'm not actually on either of these teams.
Routing turret forward warrior.
What's the thought process playing Symmetra? Couple things. So first off, you want your Sim TP for your early getting to point first for first fight on Koth is actually really important. And the Sim TP helps with that. So that would be part of it. And if you go, hey, I'm Sim, and then I'm going to swap to McCree, which would be the normal swap, you're going to be super late to the fight. So you don't love that. The other thing you run into is if you win first fight with Sim, you're now in this situation where you go, we can set up nice defensively. Sim does still work better as a defensive hero in some ways where they have to push, they have to brawl into you, sort of. Like, she does get a little bit of that. That's not perfect. I might not 100% stand by that statement, but like what you're looking at is Sim has worked pretty well in brawls. We saw Dallas went wild with Sim Brawl instead of McCree Brawl. Sim works pretty well in that. Sim also has the situation where you go, hey, if you can get in here, if you can get here first, that's a big deal. If it's Brawl v Brawl, you have your Sim that's charging. Sim works very well in a Brawl v Brawl if they're actually brawling. If you establish control, that's fine, and then you have a really powerful ult. So, like, it's a combination of Sim Brawl's pretty good, unless you end up against comps that aren't Brawl, and it's a combination of, well, we want that opening TP anyway. And you'll notice both of these people, but especially Sparker. Sparker was going Sim in the earlier King of the Hill maps. You will notice both of them will usually start on Sim, and then both of them to a degree, though to a greater degree Sparker, will swap if they don't have control, if they lose the team fight, and they don't have their ult. If they have their ult, they'll use their ult to try to retake because it's powerful, but if they don't, they'll swap off. So I hope that answers your questions, Lance. It's because she helps with the rollout and is then worth using after the rollout. But after she's lost the value of her rollout, if she's not, if she doesn't have her ult, it's not amazing to try to take the map with her, and there's ways to break her down if you have to fight into her as well, and those ways involve greater poke. Taking angles, greater poke, all that. And this is pretty normal. I'm glad teams have somewhat figured this out. If you're trying to break down a team that has Sim and is controlling point, you do need to take your angles. I would like to see more than 2 angles here, but they're sort of trying. Kelix pokes in here, Sparker and Mulfig poke in here, Core pokes in here, and then we have, like, we're softening them up from multiple angles, and the key is to soften them up from multiple angles because they can't take angles against you. Shock really can't take angles against you. They need to play around the point where they get the Sim turret value and they sort of have that to turtle with, etc. So you're playing to the fact that, well, we have a McCree and you don't, we have better range than you, and you can't really play angles against us. So we're giving up time, we're giving up point lead to try to soften you up enough that we're willing to go in and fight through your Sim. But we have to do it in such a way that we're not letting your Sim ramp. Because if we try to threaten the point and your Sim is ramping while we threaten the point, we're falling massively behind. But if your Sim can't ramp and we can soften you up just a little bit, maybe it's get, 40% of 2 people's health gone. Maybe it's get rid of your lamp. Maybe it's get rid of your ice block. Maybe it's get rid of your amp and your regenerative field. But if we can get something out of you, then we'll go take the brawl. But we will lose in a straight brawl if we're just trying to fight into a team that has Sim and has established point control. So you have to get some sort of lead, and I'm happy to see this. I would like to see it being driven a little bit better, but I'm happy to see it. I'm not convinced that was a big enough lead, guys. Like, you took your angles and then you didn't work on much of a poke lead at all. See, every time I say I'm happy to see something or I'm like proud that a team is doing something the right, proud's the right word. They're not my team, but I'm like, yeah, this is good. I'm glad that the scene is doing better. I'm glad that it's being done better. They just betray me. I should just set my expectations lower all the time. That was the most concise symmetric guide ever. Okay. Uh, I hope it answered the questions. If it didn't, let me know. We can talk more about Symmetra. I don't have a particular issue with the hero. This isn't going to work great for you, Spitfire. You did a decent job driving Shock back, but again, you didn't really build a lead. And you're still pushing into a Symmetra. Yeah. Yeah. Again, you have to have your angles. It sucks, but you have to have your angles to soften it up, and that was sort of over after the second team fight. The first team fight was Shock got control. The second team fight was Spitfire did not properly break it down, and there's not really time for a third team. Like, yes, there's time for this third team fight, and it's happening, but you're not going to win it, because you need to spend a lot of time in the second team fight to get a lead, and they didn't. No, it was excellent. Thank you. Excellent. Excellent. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Malachi.
0-1. Ready for battle.
And now Sparker's going to cave and bring out the Symmetra. Good move, Sparker. Good move. Yeah, it was clear, thanks. I've tried to play it in scrims, but other than the faster rollout, I didn't understand the value apart from Microwave Lady Scary. She is scary. But yes, I'm glad that helped then. Okay, Spitfire tried to go right to point. Shock tried to go high ground. I think that's the better rollout if you're expecting Brawl, going right to point. Because presetting with your Sim and Mei is just good on this point. And it's harder on this point. This is a good Symmetra point. Sim's getting used on a lot of King of the Hill points that she's fine at, but she's not particularly good at. She's really strong here, and she's really strong on most of Lijiang Tower. She's less strong. She's okay on the other Koth maps, but she's less strong. The other Koth points, rather. One thing that makes her so good here is there's only really 2 angles to threaten this point from. And that just makes her better because it's a lot harder to soften up the team that has control. And if you split to soften up the team between these 2 angles, those are big angles that they can run you over with their 6. They can be like, Maywall that direction, run over what's here with 6. Maywall that direction, run over what's here with 6. Like, whichever team can get here with their Sim first is hard to break down after that. It is harder to break down the Sim setup on this point than on the last point than it was on the last point. Words are hard.
The objective is now.
So the chance that Spitfire have is they will have Simwall and Shock will not, and that's pretty much the only thing that still keeps them in this map and this match. This point, this map, this match. Because otherwise, this would sort of be over. And the reason I mean that is because we talked about you only really get 2 fights, and you don't even really get 2 fights on this one. It's really heavily about the first fight, unless you can just overwhelm the team with ults and absolutely overwhelm them because of what we talked about. We're threatening to multiple angles. You can't spend time to threaten the angles the same way. They're trying to do their multi-directional split. And they're not softening the team up appropriately. They're just saying, we believe in our ability to do this, and this is another high value, Fire Strike Fire Strike window combo from Hadi and Ripa. So good job on that. And that's going to be enough for them to do it. Yep. They've gotten a lot of value from that this match, the Fire Strike window. Especially on King of the Hills. Simwall from Shock, helps for the retake. Beat from Shock. Are ultimately able to get a lead. I mean, that was a lot of brawl power that they put out there. Spitfire answer with Blizzard, but too late in terms of brawl power. And Shock are going to clean this up. But now our walls flip again, and now Spitfire are going to have the wall, and Shock will not. Are we going to see the right TP that we usually do? Oh, they went to high ground with it. Okay. And now they're going to rotate all the way around. Nice little debate there. But Shock did adjust in time, and there's not time to soften them up. You basically have to do it with your ults. There's the ult we were expecting from Spitfire. That flips the point, but they have to win they have to get a limbs off of it too. It's not enough to flip the point. You do have to win the team fight. Okay. But now you have to spending another big ult to win the fight. That's not good. That was too expensive. That was too expensive. You have self-destruct and shatter playing into Blizzard and Wall. I don't think so. This should go the way of Shock. And they recognized that they were down ults, so that was good. They recognized that they were down ults, or at least they were down important ults, so they decided to not play this standard. They didn't play this standard because playing standard was too likely to lose, so they decided, no, we're going to just like hard rush you guys. We're going to flip the script. We're just going to go, nope, we're going to go take this fight out here. You guys are planning on a normal fight. It's happening in here like all the previous fights have. Nope, we are completely, you guys have a plan, and your plan is better than ours because you have better tools than we do. So we're going to go, instead of hitting like a 50% win chance thing, we're going to go hit something, we're going to hard engage into you, which should only have like a 40% chance of winning. But the truth is, this 40% chance of winning is better than this 50, because this isn't actually a 50, because we don't have the ults, and if we take a standard fight, we know we're going to lose, because you guys have these two things, and those are these three things, and those are too powerful. So we have to do something to change the script. Maybe that's a shatter you from behind. Maybe that's a, get some like, hey, we're engaging you from someplace we have no right to be engaging you. We're engaging you when we shouldn't be engaging you. And that's what we're doing. So that's what they choose to do here, and that is good. That is a good change of pace. That is one of the things you have to do in no-win scenarios. Beautiful. You see that? And they didn't be like, oh, we can't do anything, we just do that. They invested their shatter in it, and that caused Shock to panic a little bit. Shock went, oh, shoot, what do we do? And they used their ults, but they used them too late. So they used their beat and their sim wall in a fight that they lost, and now the ult economies are fine. Even if Shock gets another fight, now the ult economies are fine for Spitfire. Not always. It's one of them. Lands, if your team is behind on ults, you either need to slow the fight down a ton, you need to either set really aggressive angles and just be like, we're gonna make this fight really slow, we're not going to let you use your ults because we're going to like do this retreating poke thing with like really hard poke the whole way in, because that's going to delay when the fight happens. We're not going to give you a good opportunity to use your ults as we build our ults, because even if we're building ults at the same speed, that's better for us, because if you have 3 ults and we have 0, and at the end of that really long thing you end up with 5 ults and we have 3, that's still way better for us. So one thing is you set up super defensive positioning with really strong corner and angle control, and you just grind the fight to be really slow. You won't let them take an engage. You won't let them hard engage onto you. The other option is you rush or force a hard engage onto them before they're ready. You break their plan. You figure that they've got some sort of plan, even if you don't know what it is. And yes, you try to force the plan on them. You change the script. You go shoot. You guys have 3 ults and we have 1 ult. What can we do to use our 1 ult first? What can we do to use, even if we don't have an ult, some sort of high power move like a Doomfist punch or, whatever, some sort of like, how can we jump on you before you're ready? Engage on you in some place that isn't optimal to engage on you, and therefore you won't expect us to engage on you there type thing. So those are the 2 directions, but you run towards one of the extremes.
Time to raise my APM. I'm gonna have to shoot you down. Taking off.
Nardstorm. Make them have 6 ults, and then you're probably going to win the fight after they use all their ults. There you go. There you go. Team with 6 ults just loses. It's just how it works. It's in the bylaws. If you have 6 ults going into a fight, you're going to lose. You're also going to use them all. Usually in Brawl, we try to use our high noons to buy time and build ultimates as we run away. No? Because, like, then you're spending high noon. Like, spending an ult to get more ults can be fine. Valk does that in some ways. Supercharger does that in some ways. Winning a fight with Earth Shatter will certainly do that. Winning a fight with a single ult will almost always do that. It'll build other ultimates. But, like, no on that one. If High Noon is the only ult I have, I'm probably going to not try to run away with High Noon. I'm probably going to try to go, hey, as you engage, you try to engage on my team, and you would like to use your Blizzard, your Beat, and your Shatter, these really powerful Brawl ults that you have, and my team, I'm probably going to say, is going to potentially kite back. Sure, maybe it's High Noon as we run away, but it's High Noon from over here as we run away. So, like, my team is here, they push into my team, my McCree peeks out, and then goes, oh, now I'm going to High Noon into the back of you, etc. type thing, because I can still win with this High Noon. Like, that's fine with me. You could also be like, hey, yeah, not really. Like, I might High Noon to buy time if I'm really close on a much stronger ult that I'm going to win with. Like, I'm going to High Noon to give my Mei a tiny bit of extra time to get Blizzard. That could work, sure. Lost too many fights with 6 ults? Yeah. Engage with it and force them to kite or use DM. Not engage, but use it as a positioning tool. That's okay. Yeah, that's a valid use of High Noon. Yeah, but I don't like using ults to make space. Like, that is not the highest and best purpose of ults. Like, sometimes it happens, but it is not the highest and best use of ults. Like, it is in the acceptable range of High Noon. It is not in the great use of High Noon. It's like, I don't want to use a window to make the other team back up. I would much rather use my window to catch them in dead space and get the eliminations and actually win the team fight. Because you don't want to be like, I spend an ult and you guys go wait behind cover, wait out the ult, and then you re-engage with your own ult. Like, I don't want that to happen. So, like, yes, it's valid, but it's not the strongest and best use. I would rather set up off-angled High Noons or crossfire between a High Noon and a window type thing. But you don't always get your way. I mean, sometimes you even hit a High Noon reload cancel, and that's not wrong either. Okay, we're just going Brawl, really? We're on Sanctum, which is like the throw out the meta map, or the throw out the meta point of all points, and we're just both running Brawl at each other. I mean, one of us has a Sigma, the other has a Hanzo. But, like, really? Okay. I want to see my soldiers, my Orissas, my Hammonds, my Junkrats, like my Torbs, my Ashes. What is this? What is this? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Shobin wins over there with Nero, and that's the point. You get control of this, you're usually going to get control of the point. Trade offer. I receive 6 seconds of time to catch my breath. You receive my BAP matrix. Yeah, I'm not really good with that one personally. I like my ult more than I like 6 seconds of downtime. Or put another way, if you're offering the BAP ult, I'll take the trade almost every time. If I'm playing against you. Mm-hmm. It's fine.
冻住，不许走，不许走。
Shock should be able to turn that. They stacked those a little hard, but they should be able to turn that. No. Okay, that's fine. But for those of you that are keeping score, it's 2-2, and they're on the final map of map 5. So this is a tie ball game. Tie game. And they are on the final point. Mm-hmm. Spitfire have control, but they're behind in progress. We've mirrored our Sigmas now. Nice flux. Not going to get punished for your flux, but can your team follow up on it well enough? Do you have a dragon? You do have a dragon that you're going to use. That you're a little late in using. You guys messed up your timing on that. That's disappointing. Now the sim wall comes out. Yeah, that's a big deal. Not getting the timing right on that Flux Dragon is, flipped the point. Lost the team fight. Oh, I spoke too soon. Did not lose the team fight. Calyx had something to say about that. Do need to hurry up and flip it back. Mm-hmm. Sure. Unfortunate. Not enough from that shatter. Super should not be allowed to flip that. Okay. That's probably it then. Well. No, he's still gonna... There's still room for Spitfire to win the fight. Okay, there's less room for Spitfire to win the fight. Mm-hmm. No, you actually have to win the high ground, Shock. You do have to win the high ground. The point is not enough. Okay. Shobin's got the high ground. I mean, he doesn't have the high ground, but he's doing enough on the high ground that they aren't losing the high ground, which means that then they can actually win because they're not losing the high ground. Okay, that's fine. Shock got a little playing scared here, playing like, oh, we only need the point. No, you had 3 people here. You definitely had to go fight for the high ground. That was a little weird, but they got it in the end. Okay, that was an interesting match. I'm glad we reviewed that one. We got to see some of the poke versus brawl. Like that was a bit of a treat that we got to see that the Orisa poke versus brawl. We got to see a team actually doing the turtling, which we haven't seen a ton of. I haven't at least seen a ton of in Overwatch League lately because maybe it's been happening and I just haven't been watching. But I wasn't seeing a ton of that in professional play, which was good. You had to go teach that as an answer in professional play when teams did run into poke. So I'm glad to see a little bit more of that in Owl because there wasn't a ton of it in Contenders, Collegiate, Owl, etc. So that's cool. Um, Overall, this was a fun match to watch. This definitely was a hey, shocker champions, multiple wins under their belt, etc. They're not the undisputed kings this season, certainly, but they're still a good team, even if they lost Striker. And Spitfire have generally been considered not that. They were mostly a promoted roster from last season's Contenders champion, and they haven't been faring amazingly, which perhaps wasn't a great look for Contenders in general, or at least EU Contenders. So I'm happy to see them get close here, get within spitting distance. And I'm also happy to see Spilo, who's really only been a part of the roster for a week, but probably closer to 2 weeks when we factor in, maybe even 3 when we factor in working with before announced tryouts, things like that. And I assume final phase tryouts where it's like you're mostly working with the guy, you've mostly decided on the guy, etc. Happy to see them take an uptick after bringing him on because he's a good coach. Now, a good coach can't always change everything, especially this late in the season. It takes time to do work, and you also have to work with other structural factors, realities of what players you have, realities of the organization, etc. But this was an interesting match to see, and I'm glad to see Spitfire doing a little well. And I say that as someone who, logistically, I suppose, Shock is the nearest team to me. But yeah, I thought that was cool. Do you guys have questions, comments, anything you'd like me to get into in terms of what happened in this match? Why did it happen the way it did? Anything like that? I think we did reasonable analysis as we went through. I didn't go as deep as I sometimes go because I knew it was 5 maps and it already took 3 hours and 40 minutes. And I know I kind of knew that if I went into the level of depth that I sometimes go into, we'd be spending, well, sometimes more than an hour per map, and it's easy for me to do that. I've heard a lot of people saying Violets and FD God don't work well together. Would you agree? Kind of. The problem that you run into is they're both sort of, I don't want to say glory seekers because that's not right, but like teams sort of need a certain level of balance to them. This isn't like a hard rule, but if you look at a composition just from a hero standpoint, let's look at this. Let's look at Brawl. Reinhardt, D.Va, McCree, May, Bap, and Lucio. And if you look at these heroes, positionally speaking, these two heroes are sort of responsible for your defense. That's not like a completely true thing, but if you sort of think of like everyone is responsible for your defense. McCree is going to be doing some peeling. May might be freezing with some peel. Reinhardt has a shield, etc. It's not like D.Va doesn't boost her into people's faces and micromissile. D.Va and Lucio can absolutely make an offensive play together, the two of them, where the two of them dive a BAP together and eliminate that BAP, especially if they see that the BAP used their shift too freely, and then the two of them go punish it. But if we generally think about it, these are sort of the biggest peelers in our comp. They might be hyper flexible in what they do, but these guys are sort of responsible for our defense. They have our amps to take us out. They have our amps to help us recover. They have our defense matrix to be like, hey, let's cover this, etc. These are sort of the flexibly defensive positions. The people who are like, no, go off and actually try to be more in charge of our offense, that's going to be more in like, hey, the McCree, take your off angle and get picks done from there. Hey, your May, this wall really opens the door to the beginning of the fight. Hey, your BAP is, doing a ton of healing, sure, but that's not quite defense the same way. I'm thinking of defense as a little different. So like maybe I'll just consider that something else, but you could consider it that there. And then your Reinhardt sure has the shield, but really you're trying to get in there and use their hammer, try to get a limbs like that. Like these are all sort of like offensive aspects of your comp, whereas I'd consider the Lucio and the D.Va in most comps more defensive. And I'd actually consider that true for most comps in general. Your Lucio sometimes becomes Brig, which is even more, except when ulting, mostly playing a defensive role, mostly playing a, hey, this is something I bring to the comp. Yes, some flexibility. Yes, enabling my Tracer, my Genji, my Echo to play more aggressive with repair packs, but sort of bringing a hold it together, help sort of thing mentality, like sort of a defensive support-ish, not support isn't really the right word, but that's sort of a more defensive type aspect. And this maybe isn't the perfect word for it, but I think you guys will get where I'm going with this. If you don't, you guys know the drill, stop me in chat. And what you run into is a lot of Lucios don't want to play that style. The Reddit Lucio style. We saw this. We've seen this with lots of Lucios. We've seen this with FD God. We've seen this with. I can go. We can see this with stuff that would be more like. I mean, we could go to like Red Shell, Swimmer, Grego, even if we want to go back to the original Cloud9 roster, where they're playing a more like aggressive Lucio. They're more like, no, Lucio is an assassin. Lucio is going to go in there. He's going to get boops. He can do a lot of damage. I want to go in and I want to do work hard. And that's fine. That's totally like fine. That's a reasonable way to play Lucio. The hero can absolutely do that. But the thing that you then run into is if you're not playing with a Moira, in terms of how we've optimized Overwatch from a team compositional standpoint, you don't have enough peel for your flex support because we've mostly optimized Overwatch in a way where we want to run Zen, which is a lot of power, or Ana, which is a lot of power, team power in the flex support position. But what they trade for bringing all of that team power is some vulnerability themselves. But we can patch that up with a Lucio or a Brig or a Mercy to help peel for them. Mercy patches that up a little worse than the other two, but we can do it. We can patch up that weakness that they're bringing to the team by going, hey, Mercy doesn't bring as much power. Damage boost isn't as good as Discord for what you bring to the team. But you also help allow your Zen to exist by running Mercy, for example. Well, when you play Lucio aggressively and get eliminated by a Remix from Mulfig, when that happens too often, well, now your flex support, who's we're bringing knowing that they're kind of vulnerable, isn't getting tougher enough to power to the team, or they are, but they're going to get in trouble more often type thing. Or not only, or there's an additional person out there they have to support because they have to go hit shots on their Lucio who isn't protecting them but is taking damage out there fighting something else while also they have to protect themselves. So it becomes like a positional type thing almost, where it's like, that doesn't really work. It would sort of be like, do I even want to go there? It would sort of be like you can run Ryan Winston together, and Ryan Winston together are perfectly valid as heroes, even though they're both engagement tanks. But you have to understand which one is actually sort of taking the lead, which one is actually leading the engagements. It can't be Ryan runs in and goes and fights while Winston goes over. Like it. I mean, it can be. Sometimes it is. So that's perhaps a bad example. Yeah, I'd say it's kind of what I got into here and what covered here. This would be more viable. Your super aggressive Lucio that wants to do a lot of this stuff. If you then went, our diva is going to play hyper defensive from a peel perspective. That would potentially free things up a little if you made your diva play even more peel aggressive, but that's not perfect and that's not really optimal. The other option is your Lucio can afford to play more aggressive if you're running Moira. If you're running a lot of rush stuff like Winston, Diva, Moira, Lucio, you can absolutely, you want your super aggressive, super I'm in their face Lucio because that's frigging fantastic. On the flip side, you can get flex supports that are less aggressive than someone like Violet. You absolutely can, and that can potentially work with a more aggressive Lucio. So I see where that argument comes from. I think the unfortunate reality is mostly and you got this complaint a lot from flex support players, where flex support players had the complaint during the era of Jonak, when Jonak was just considered the best at everything, oh my goodness, where flex support players would complain that all of the L teams would complain that, like, we don't have a Jonak, we can't win, but they also didn't want to recruit. They didn't want to recruit flex support players that tried to play like Jonak. They wanted to recruit flex support players that tried to play a little more conservatively, etc., because they went, well, you're not Jonak. Like that was a common complaint that you heard from flex support players, where it's like, this is the one that everyone thinks is the best Zen player that they wish they had, but teams won't actually recruit people that are playing in that style. They want a more defensive one. And that more defensive one can pair better with a slightly more aggressive Lucio. But anyways, I'm going on a tangent here. That was a interesting question. I see where they're coming from. I don't necessarily know that I would go, oh no, this can't work, etc. I think it just becomes a, well, which one is going to play a little more too? And I think ultimately the answer has to be FD God has to play a little more to the pace that the team would like to the archetype that is sort of built. And the reason that you have to do that is because we've mostly just figured out that that's the better archetype. Like if we're looking at, well, who has more aggressive power more consistently, well, the flex support does, not the main support. That's not saying you can't get good strong offensive power out of your main support, but on a consistent basis, like if you're both playing it to the best it could be played from an offensive direction, your Zen's going to have more power than your Lucio. Your BAP is going to have more power than your Lucio. That's not to say that, there aren't exceptions where maybe you flip the script on Well, for example, but yeah, that's one way that you could sort of think of that, and I understand where that's coming from. I think ultimately FD God, if he stays in the league, if he stays as like, hey, on this team as this part, will ultimately be scaling back a bit because teams don't want their Lucios that aggressive. And I think they're mostly right to not want their Lucios that aggressive. Someone could totally break the meta, show us we're all wrong, and this is why you should be. But they're going to have to find the right flex support player to play with, the right diva to play with, the right so-and-so to play with, or the right meta, like a Moira Lucio one, to show us why it's the case. FD likes to make plays, right. Toby, what about Toby? Are you saying Toby's an example of a more defensive Lucio, or Toby's a super aggressive Lucio? Because Toby, I don't consider a super aggressive Lucio. I think he paired reasonably with Ryu Zhang back in the day, etc. And Ryu Zhang was, the more aggressive Ana, the archetype that Violet follows. Okay. Cool. I think that's going to do it. If you guys have any final questions, throw them up in chat. If you're enjoying the content, please do like and subscribe, as that helps me out quite a bit, and I really do appreciate that. That is quite cool. As I go back through chat here, thank you once again, Nick, for the $10 super chat, and I think we are good to go. If you guys want to catch these live when they happen, the best way to do that is to join my Discord in the description below. Go get that watcher role under get notifications. Just react in that channel to get the watcher role, and then you'll get Discord pings when these go live. And those are pretty reliable for getting pings. They're more reliable than, say, the YouTube bell, though you can check the YouTube bell. That's fine too. For getting pings for when I go live, so you can be here if you want to ask questions, if you want to contribute to the commentary and be like, no, Temporal, go on a tangent and tell us about this Violet FD God pairing. Sure, absolutely. But you got to be here to ask me if you want to hear those, if you want to get your own questions in there. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, so we're going to call it there. Thanks, guys. Temporal out.